Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? I hope you had a great weekend. Welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily on a packed Monday coming out of a weekend that had, it had a long-awaited Bomber win. It had a Jet development camp, and it had a historic victory for Canada at the Copa America, setting up a rematch with the Argentines. Lionel Messi, the number one team in the world, tomorrow. I got the Canada shirt on today. Went into the Qatar bag for this one because a lot of people talking soccer around this nation as well heading into tomorrow night. We're going to get to all of it. Jeff Hamilton, it will be hammer time on Winnipeg Sports Talk today. We'll dive into the Bombers' big win on Friday night and look ahead to a huge, huge game at home on Friday against the Calgary Stampeders, who blew a late lead and lost to the Montreal Alouettes. We'll have much more on the entire Canadian Football League coming up on CFL 110 this week. For you CFL fans, make sure to go to your favorite podcast feed, wherever you get Winnipeg Sports Talk, and search CFL 110. It'll also be up on the YouTube channel a little bit later on, presented by our pal Pat over at Garage Living Winnipeg. And we're going to talk to Gareth Wheeler about the historic result for Canada and another shot at the Argentines moving on to the Final Four at the biggest event in between the World Cups for our national soccer team. And, of course, Jet Development Camp. Kevin Cheveldayoff spoke. We will get to a bunch of that. Jamie Thomas from Jets TV is going to jump on. And we'll talk about the signings as well coming out from the weekend of Logan Stanley, as well as David Gustafson. So lots on the plate today. We've got picks to make for Assiniboia Downs and a chance for you to join us at the track coming up in a few weeks. If you can pick the race right, stay tuned a little later on the program for details on that. Just before we bring in Michael Remis, a big thanks to the sponsors that make this program happen each and every day. I mentioned our friends at Garage Living Winnipeg presenting CFL 110. Also want to thank the great people at Princess Auto, Coolbet Canada, Consolidated Supply, Rollies Transfer, Manitoba Battery, Canadian Club, Little Brown Jug, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, the beer can. Beautiful weekend to get up to the beer can, that was for sure. Next door on Sherbrooke and Hoagie Boys, the Winnipeg Goldeyes, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, Breezy Bend Country Club, Assiniboia Downs. We will get to a why not question of the day as well for not Autocorp, but Waverly and McGillivray. Michael Remis, what's up? How was your weekend?
It was great. Yeah, you mentioned the Goldeyes. Had a great time checking out Blue Cross Park yesterday for the Goldeyes afternoon. What a great weather weekend, Hassan.
Yeah, my spotter said that you were there with the crew at the game yesterday.
Yeah, took my son to hit up the ice cream, got his picture with the Blue Cross mascot.
I like the Blue Cross mascot.
Yeah, that's a nice addition to the mascot scene in Winnipeg, the Blue Cross mascot. So we added that to our checklist.
What did you guys eat at the game? What did you eat at the game?
It was just a quick. We ate before. We had lunch before, so we just got ice cream. It's funny when we got there, no line. Like, oh, ice cream. Then by a couple innings later, the line was crazy. It was a huge wait. So I was pumped to get in there. I felt good about my decision.
Yeah, the Fish lost yesterday. They were 1-2 on the weekend. They've got the day off today, and then are back at it over the course of the next 3 days. Listen, we'll get to Jet development camp, but how was it? Well, they developed. Overall, it went great. There was some big results, though, that we got to talk about. And, listen, let's get to the Bombers right off the bat. All week long, you could feel the angst in Winnipeg going into this game at 0-4 against an Ottawa team that they had already lost to. Now without Zach Caleros, in addition to Kenny Lawler and Dalton Schoen, over $1 million on the sidelines. And the Bombers got back to business and got back to bully ball. And this was a performance by Chris Streveler, Brady Oliveira, and that offensive line that I think can really add some overall confidence in that dressing room and in the fan base of going forward. To me, I mean, there was that 11-play drive where it was just run after run after run. And that's the Blue Bombers that we remember over the last few years, Remis. A gorgeous night, a great crowd, but most importantly, a win. And, from listening to Mike O'Shea and Chris Streveler after the game, you knew how much they wanted it, how much they needed it. And again, it's only one football game, but you got to start somewhere. And let's hope this is the beginning of a big turnaround of the season.
Yeah, we talked about a lot of things coming into this game, needing the offense to get going, needing Brady to get going, needing to get turnovers from the defense. And I think a lot of the stuff that they were missing, you certainly saw in this game. They figured out a game plan. Okay, how can we utilize these two guys? And man, Chris Streveler, he is one tough dude. It seemed like he was getting so banged up after every run, but they grinded it out. And, with all the receivers out, Brady Oliveira, huge performance on the ground, 129 yards on 23 carries, nice 5.6 average per carry, but we've seen him do it more and more through the air over the last couple of years. 37 yards, leading the team in receiving with 5 catches. So you had the offense going. Castillo, I mean, he's had an excellent season as well, has a perfect 6 for 6 since he called out those chip balls. He's been incredible since that first week. And again, the defense, Willie Jefferson, huge game. You had an interception, you had sacks, fumble recovery as well. So you're getting turnovers. The offense is moving. Now, I don't know if you're going to be winning like Collaros is back practicing. I think it's tough to win a lot of games throwing 127 yards passing, but they figured out this formula here with Streveler and Oliveira. And if they stay healthy, you can keep pounding the ball with those guys. And nice revenge win for the Bombers after losing to Ottawa earlier in the season.
Yeah, I mean, listen, nice revenge. It's just nice to get a win, period. So, I mean, they got it, and they move on to Calgary. And, yeah, listen, with a guy like Micah Alway and Cam Judge in the middle there, it's going to be tough to maybe replicate what the Bombers did this week. But we do expect Zach Collaros back. He's back at practice today. Hey, shout out to my guy, Jake Bowen-Moss. Jake, who was with me in Qatar. We're going to have to go, and you better be wearing that Davies jersey tomorrow night, Jake, for the big game. I know Jake will be. We will be getting to some Coolbet lines a little later on and just put together a little double play for the Coolbet exclusives tonight over in the lock shop. But, moving on, Reem, moving through that game, not only was it a great performance by the offense, the offensive line, the running game, also a really, really nice performance from the defense. And listen, with the exception of the game against the BC Lions where they got torched, the Lions have been torching a lot of people this season, and they've got the Riders this week in a game that we'll be focusing on big time on CFL 110 later on this week with Jeff Hamilton. But, the defense has found a ways to keep them in games and give them an opportunity to win, and they did it again with maybe their most impressive game of the entire season against Drew Brown. Of course, Drew Brown was knocked out on that unfortunate hit from Crandy. It was flagged. He was not kicked out of the game. And we heard afterwards that I think a lot of people on the Bomber sidelines really feeling for Drew as well. An unfortunate part of the game. But listen, the Bomber defense, a big, big part of that win as well, as impressive as the running game was, which kind of was taking most of the headlines.
Yeah, I was watching Connor's WST Weekly that we posted today on our podcast feed and YouTube channel. He had Willie J as the third starter. You hadn't seen that kind of breakout game. We've been waiting for him to come. He's got those big hands. He's great at knocking down passes. And there he was, putting pressure on the quarterback, recovering a fumble, sacking, getting sacks as well. So we had, the Bombers defense, I agree with you. Aside from that BC game where they seemed to just, let him through at the end, they've been very good, and not a lot of as many concerns about the defense as you've had about the offense. Looking for points against. They've played one more game than Saskatchewan and Calgary, but they're 114 in 5 games. I think their average is probably better than those guys. So the defense has been good, and it was again yesterday. We didn't see any crumbacks like we saw last season. As you saw Crum come in, you're like, oh man, what's gonna happen here? I mean, he ran all over them last year. It's like, the element of surprise. They haven't prepared for Crum, but wasn't to be on a great. What a great Friday night there at IG Field. Man, did we get some good weather.
Well, it was. And listen, I have mentioned this before, how like the games, I mean, the Bombers are promoting it as Winnipeg's biggest party, and the games have absolutely been that. Like the team hasn't won the first few games. They finally got that win. Whoever it was within the Jets organization that thought it would be a good idea to bring all of the Jets prospects out together in a group to the game, very well done. You get a chance to, show off the fan base, the sporting scene here in Winnipeg. And I'm telling you, and I've said this long before, if you're a 19, 20, 21-year-old guy that wants to go and have a great time and whoop it up a little bit and see a lot of people of the opposite sex as well, the Bomber games are the place to be. I mean, I think back, when back in the Moose days, you go to like the Tijuana Yacht Club or whatever, and there'd be 800 or 900 people, and it'd be a massive party and be so much fun. That is what the north end of these games are right now. And I'm sure some of the young men that maybe hadn't been to CFL football before from other parts of the world or part of the country went and said, wait a second, this is what's going on in Winnipeg? This is amazing. But for everyone inside that organization, they just needed a win. Let's hear from Mike O'Shea, who spoke after the game. It was a long time coming. First one in the win column, up and away from here. Here's Osh on getting win number one.
Yeah, it's pretty good. We certainly need. We'll enjoy this one tonight, and I don't know that the guys can. You can't hang on to that emotion of it. It's nice that they get rewarded for the work and for staying the course and, not flinching despite whatever pressures they may be, right? They didn't flinch yet. They haven't flinched yet. So it's good. It's nice for them to be rewarded. They should enjoy this one tonight with each other.
All right. Well, a big win for the club. And a big response after an 0-4 start. Here's what Coach O'Shea had to say about the Bombers finding a way to win and bouncing back after a very miserable month of June.
It's better that they respond than they don't, because then you're into a different set of conversations. But yeah, they did well. And once again, they don't need that. They haven't needed that in a long time. It's not often, right? But yeah. They certainly wanted to play more physical too. They just had to let it go, not worry about things and just run.
Remis, we knew that Streveler was going to bring the energy, and it was very clear very early in the football game that number 17 was going to will his way and do everything he could to, bottom line, end up on the right side of the scoreboard. And he's a very unique player. Buck Pierce put them in a position to succeed. They ran the ball way more than you'd ever normally see a CFL offense do. But tell you what, that is part of the Chris Streveler package. And between he and Brady Oliveira, who had his best game of the season, it was a excellent performance in a little bit of a different way than you normally see teams win in the CFL.
Yeah, it was a nice job by the offense saying, okay, we have Chris Streveler, not exactly a pocket passer. How are we going to change our formula? And they're able to open up some holes for Brady. And these guys are big, physical, punishing on the opposing defense. You wear them down, and you get some chunk yardage and have these extended drives, put you in position to win. So well done by him. And again, he was I just have memories of him in the playoffs, being so injured and just going so hard and not slowing down. And you saw him. He was hurting after certain runs, but kept getting up, going back in there under center, and just driving it down Ottawa's throat. So well done by the Bombers' run game. And Brady, he's kind of been up and down this year. He started injured. He did have that. Was it the BC game? I think it was his best game, even when he was coming off the injury.
Yeah.
But the run game just wasn't there against Calgary, and you wonder if it was. They were 0-4, but these games were just so close. Ottawa, you're at the goal line, you can't score. Overtime against Calgary. So I don't think they were certainly playing as poor. They weren't playing great. Like, the offense wasn't scoring, but they were right there in every game, and there they were. They won, and they covered the spread there, Huss.
Yes, they did. They that was important to us in the lock shop and everyone that backed them over at Coolbet. But for the Bombers, it was just about finding a way to win. Chris Streveler led the way. Here's what Strev had to say after the game, just on getting that big win.
Gritty, hard fought. We played well in all three phases, and we ran the ball well. Our defense played amazing. They made big plays, big takeaways, sacks, and critical moments. That was our brand of football. That was all three phases, the way that we play. And I'm just really proud of our guys, the way we fought tonight, man.
On the physical scale, where was it?
We'll have to watch the film, but felt like a 10 out of 10.
You know, you understand why he's been so popular here, even since leaving. He's a bit of a unicorn when it comes to the Canadian Football League, and he's a 10 out of 10 guy, an incredible personality. But he is also a guy that you can just understand why he can get the best out of his teammates, because you know that Chris Streveler is putting it all on the line each and every play. Streveler talked a little bit more about his first start in 5 years.
Yeah, I talked about it leading into this game, just how much appreciation I have for these moments. Not having started a game in 5 years and not having played a ton of football and having been out of football for a year last year, I don't take these opportunities for granted. I don't take these moments for granted, and it makes it that much sweeter getting to go out there and fight with these guys the way that we did. It just honestly makes me emotional because I just know how rare these opportunities are, and it's really special.
Well, he did what he had to do to get that win. It's more special when you win, I'll tell you that, and I think Chris Streveler would be the first one to agree. But listen, this was about the offensive line leading the way, and Chris Streveler and Brady Oliveira battering the Ottawa Redblacks defense. Here's Strev on he and Brady having such big days on the ground.
It's fun, man. Like, to know that we're both going to put our bodies on the line to move the football and to win games, it's exciting. And I can't say enough about the way our offensive line responded. We challenged them this week to be physical, and they were physical. They got movement. We ran the ball on first down. That's our brand of football, man. And I'm just so proud of the way those guys fought and played. That's our brand of physicality.
All right, so there is Chris Streveler with the win. Bombers 1-4. Back on the practice field today with Zach Collaros, getting ready for this game on Friday night. Remis, huge. I mean, especially when you consider the way that Stamps choked away that big lead against Montreal. Credit to Montreal; they were amazing in the second half, and particularly that fourth quarter of the game on Saturday night. But now the Bombers getting a little bit closer to Calgary and get a chance to even the season series and get right there with them if they can put together another performance like they did last Friday against a divisional opponent they're chasing coming up this weekend.
I'm starting to get a little more optimistic, Huss, about the Bombers now that you got the first one under the belt. As mentioned, they've played these close games, they lost, but other than BC, who's looked really good and dominated Hamilton, who has been terrible at 0-5. Like, is this West Division, is there any real contender? Like, do you buy Saskatchewan at 4-0? Calgary, is Jake Mayer any good? They went to overtime. Edmonton, they're 0-4. So, it's a long season, and I think you can overreact about the Bombers 0-4 start. I don't think anyone had that, but they're just take it 1 week at a time, and they can chip away and make their way back into the playoffs. And this is the recipe. It's just got to peak at the right time. We saw this with Montreal last year. I mean, no one had them at the beginning of the year, but you build and you kind of peak at the Grey Cup. And I'm honest, I still didn't buy them when they won, but obviously I was very wrong about the way they were playing, and they're off to a 5-0 start. But I think there's certainly going to be a spot available for the Bombers when the season's done and you see the teams in the playoffs, because I still put them above all the other teams in the West, except, well, maybe Saskatchewan. I think we'll have to see. It's a big test for them. Definitely BC is the top, but I mean, Saskatchewan, if Trevor Harris is hurt, like, I can't see this 4-0 record being sustainable.
Listen, I think they're going to get a dose of reality on Saturday in BC. But hey, credit to them. I mean, they're 4-0 right now. They won with a backup quarterback, just like the Bombers did on Friday night, and that's what you need to do. I mean, you're going to get thrown a lot of adversity throughout the year. Well, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think we certainly need to see Zach Collaros get his game to a level higher than it was, at least in the first month of the season when he returns. You'd love to see Kenny Lawler get back in. They're going to need to find a way to replace the production of Dalton Schoen. Like, it's not going to be easy, but the Bombers were staring a situation that they could have been an afterthought, into the third month of the season if they didn't turn things around. It's just one game, but it's a massive win and a huge game for them, and they'll get a chance to make it 2 in a game that they absolutely have to have against Calgary Friday night at Princess Auto Stadium. We'll talk more Bombers with Hammer coming up a little later on. But listen, Remo, Friday was not just the Bombers, and, it was funny. If you're in the stadium watching the penalty shootout between Canada and Venezuela on your phone, you certainly weren't alone. And the funny thing about it was there were so many people doing that at the game. And when Canada ended up winning the shootout against the Venezuelans, it coincided at a point in the game where Ottawa had a relatively big play. And you heard this cheer, and a lot of people going nuts, and people that weren't locked into the soccer game at all were wondering what the hell was going on. What are these people so happy about? Well, then they found out, Remis, I mean, a roller coaster of all time through the penalties and really through the second half of Canada, who threw everything at Venezuela but could not get the goal to put them up 1, and it had to go to penalties. And Alphonso Davies in the 5th shot, shooting, needing to keep his team alive, gets it done, stone cold. Max Crepeau follows it up with a beautiful save on the 6th shooter for Venezuela. And then Kone calmly puts it into the back of the net. And Canada moves on to the semifinal of the Copa America. I know there's a few Granny Bomber fan that aren't having any of it, but this is something that this is all people talk to me about all weekend long, in addition to the Bomber win. And we've been waiting for a long time to have a legitimate men's national team that can compete with the top teams in the world. And I mean, listen, they're still not on the level of an Argentina, but are going to get another crack at them. And, for soccer to be growing the way it is in this country, for Canada to have qualified for the World Cup on their own merit last year, going to Qatar, hosting in 2026, this is just, it's hard to even put into words how big this is for our national team. And considering our new coach, Jesse Marsh, has only been on the job for 2 months, a result that I don't think was even conceivable when he took over. But here they are, going up against Messi again and the best team in the world in front of 80,000 plus on Tuesday night.
Yeah, there was so much excitement for Canada soccer leading into the World Cup, and they had that disappointing performance. Nice to see Canada rallying around. We even saw, how about Sidney Crosby shown in the dressing room after Jacob Schaffelberg posting this one on X. Everyone's hopping on. And Canada, Argentina. And I got to say,
this is so cool.
And first of all, Crosby, man, he's looking a little gray there. He's no longer Sid the Kid anymore.
He's been in the league for 20 years.
I know.
Dusty was saying the same thing during the lock shop. I'm like, guys.
It's crazy. But I got to say, how 2024 is it, Huss, to be at one sporting event and watching another? It seems like it's becoming, it used to be kind of a rare thing. I think data plans are getting cheaper. 5G more prominent. We were at the Gold Eyes game. People were watching the Cup final. I was at the last Bomber game. Me and the guy beside me were just cozying up, watching Florida Edmonton. And as you mentioned, it's like affecting cheering for a different game when you're at one game. And I saw, I think it was Bridget mentioning in chat that people at Wimbledon are cheering for the England soccer match too. I'm here for it. I don't know where you stand on watching another game on your phone while you're at a game. Is that Yay or nay here? Where do you weigh in on this?
Well, obviously I'm yay because I do it. I mean, like, you have to make a decision. Geez, am I going to miss the Bomber game to go watch the soccer? Probably not. I mean, listen, if you were posted up at a bar with both of the games on, you were in a great spot. But listen, we talked about it all week. I mean, Friday night, 25 and sunny, summer. I mean, there's no better place to be than Princess Auto Stadium when the team is playing. But I didn't want to hear about it secondhand. So, it's a little bit of multitasking. And I'm sure the Bombers would far rather people go and pay attention to whatever else is happening on their phone while they have asses in seats at the stadium. So we do that. I'm with you. Like the thought of, well, and this is a perfect example. You can say, I'm going to go to the Bomber game and I'm going to PVR. Don't tell me what happens.
Don't
and
do
then
that.
You hear a couple thousand people cheering and high-fiving around it, and you find it out. The only thing you can really do that with is wrestling. And I did that on the weekend. I PVR'd the Money in the Bank. I was out watching the Brazil Uruguay game.
Yeah.
And the Calgary-Montreal game, and I just made a point of not looking at my phone too much as far as for Twitter. But overall, and we're going to get to this a little bit later on with Gareth Wheeler, just a massive, massive performance by Canada. They have, and the best part about this, if you've been following this at all on social media, is the people in the States are just absolutely losing it because the U.S. men's national team is in disarray. They face planted at home in this tournament. They're firing their coach. They're wondering why the hell Jesse Marsh took the Canada job and didn't get the USA job. And Canada's the lone CONCACAF team sticking around while their rivals, the Americans and the Mexicans, did not get out of the group stage. So historic times for Canada soccer. We're going to be all over this for the next couple days. And the great thing as well, this guarantees them 2 more matches. And for our team at this program, everyone is huge for moving forward. You get another crack at the Argentines. They're a huge underdog. But this is why they play the games, folks. I mean, you chip in a chair, right? And then even if they lose, they'll play in the 3rd place game against either Colombia or Uruguay. So tomorrow night, I'm really looking forward to seeing what the TV numbers are from this game because this is sort of the dead time of the season. There's no hockey. The CFL is off. We do actually have a big basketball game coming up. Speaking of international competition, Canada and the U.S. are playing. That's on Wednesday, Remis? You just sent me? They just announced that?
I just sent you this. Yeah, I mean, it's Olympic season. I mean, we're going to have Canada's women at the Olympic and other Olympic events, but I think one of the focuses here is going to be basketball. First time in the Olympics since 2000, and Canada is playing USA in Vegas. I don't know who keeps planning events in Vegas in July, Huss. They just had the record temperature. What was it, like 47 Celsius, 48, approaching 50. Good thing you got out of there, Huss. It's hard, although no one goes outside. It's kind of like here in the winter. But yeah, July 10 on Sportsnet at 9:30, Canada will play USA as part of a basketball showcase. So Canada, I mean, they got Jamal Murray, SGA. They got a good team. So
Dort, the Canada team is for real. And in things like basketball and soccer where we haven't been powers before, we're getting better, and it's an exciting time. And again, just back to the soccer. Yes, our women will be looking to get on the podium again at the Olympics coming up in a few weeks. But for this week, the focus is on our men at the Copa America. The focus for hockey fans this weekend was on Jets development camp. Jamie Thomas is going to join us in just a minute. But as I mentioned, coming up this week, another edition of CFL 110 with Jeff Hamilton. And the Hammer and I are going to talk Bombers coming up. But CFL 110 is brought to you by our friends at Garage Living Winnipeg. I've had some great response to working with Garage Living Winnipeg. Talked to Pat on the weekend. Appreciate everyone from WST who's found out a little bit more about what might be possible to revolutionize their garage with the gang at Garage Living. I mean, if your garage is a mess, if you've been dealing with, let's just say, not getting the most out of your space there, Garage Living Winnipeg can completely transform your garage in a few days to a beautiful, clean, functional garage that looks amazing and adds value to your home. Specializing in stunning polyaspartic floor coatings, high-end made-in-Canada metal cabinets, slat wall, and overhead storage solutions, your garage can completely change into a spot where you not only love to work, but also love to play and hang out in as well. Pat Kanuga, you know him well from his time, 20 years plus on the CBC Morning Show. He's been a vintage car guy for decades and knows garages. And when you're talking about a 10-car garage mahal or a single-car garage in the back lane, he can work with you to come up with a design to meet your needs. Give him a call for a free in-garage consultation, 204-999-1234. Again, that's 999-1234. You can see some of their work online at garageliving.com and see what you can do. The result, I've gone on this site. I mean, it really is amazing what they can do to completely transform these garages. So give Pat a call, 999-1234. Tell him the boys at Winnipeg Sports Talk sent you. Hey, if you've got a move coming up, take as much of the stress out of it as possible with the leaders in moving and storage here in Winnipeg. Family owned and operated for over 60 years. Rollies Transfer. Rollies are everywhere. You've seen their trucks all around. Listen, they've got an extensive logistics business that takes them throughout Winnipeg and southern Manitoba on a daily basis, which means flexible routes, flexible timing, and great prices on your move. Best way to find out more about how Rollies can help you is go to their beautiful new website at rollies.com. Top right corner, you'll see the request a quote feature. Click on that. Let her know where and when you're moving and what you're moving. They'll turn it around with a very quick, competitive quote to get you moving in the right direction. And as I say, we know how stressful moving is. Take as much of that stress out of it. For your next move, use the most trusted name in moving and storage or moving and transfer in Manitoba, Rollies Transfer. Online today. Request a quote at rollies.com. Got to thank our friends at Consolidated Supply for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. They've got a lot going on, as you can imagine. They, of course, are the leaders in irrigation systems, artificial turf. Golf Carts is the official club car dealer in Manitoba. And have other great options for your property, including hot tubs and amazing outdoor kitchens. Not to mention they're the leaders in small engine parts and repair, and now have the entire line of Crest power tools, including that satellite-guided robotic RTK mower. Find out more and check out what they've going on in person. Check out their showroom, open to the public, 1395 Niagara Road East. And, of course, you can find out more online at cte.ca. Just before we bring in Jamie Thomas, whether you need it for your boat, your camper, an ATV, you got to have batteries for these summer weekends to power all the fun that you're having away from the city. Manitoba Batteries there for you with the biggest and best selection of batteries anywhere at the best prices. You can shop local and beat the pants off the big box stores for price. And even better yet, Donnie and the gang at Manitoba Battery will deliver those batteries to you for free anywhere inside the perimeter with any purchase over $60. It's just that easy. They do have locations on Logan Avenue and the new location on Dover Court. Give them a call or order online today at manitobabattery.com. All right, development camp in the books and a couple signings for the Jets on the weekend. Let's bring in a summer visit from our pal Jamie Thomas from Jets TV. JT, what's up? How are you?
Buddy, what's going on?
Well, what's going on? I finally made it back from Vegas after an extended draft trip that seemingly never ended, and just had a great weekend. You know, obviously a lot going on down at the Hockey for All Center. Yeah. Canada winning, Bombers getting a win. Saw the development, the prospects out at the Bomber game, taking in some of Winnipeg's sports scene. It was overall a pretty great weekend, and I think the WSTers here are in pretty good spirits.
As they should be. And listen, it would not be, your show if something didn't happen at the National Hockey League draft, whether your computer blows up last year, whether you can't make it back from the draft this year. So I can't wait to see what's going to happen next year for Winnipeg Sports Talk at the National Hockey League draft.
I'll say this. I just hope that it's like that was so spectacular of a show in Vegas, in the Sphere.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't know how you raise the bar so high with a production unlike anything we've seen before, and then go to a bunch of guys in boardrooms next year. I mean, I hope that they'll find a way, and even if it's not every year, like every few years, to get back there, Jamie. Because I can tell you, I mean, I think it was great for the league too, because the novelty of the Sphere, I think, had a lot of people paying more attention to the National Hockey League that weekend when they made the picks. And I mean, you've been to drafts before. I mean, it also is the one true hockey convention of the year where scouts and coaches and management and agents and media, everyone is there. It would really be too bad to lose that. But I mean, just the show in Vegas was next level.
Yeah, I don't understand. And I think there's going to be a point where they come back to the way that they've always done it. Now, I understand, like, we see how the National Football League drafts and works. I just don't think the National Hockey League can equal what that is, the spectacle when you go decentralized. And that's what makes the NHL draft so cool, is the families and it's a great time for all the scouts that do all the hard work to come together, in that situation to, for all their hard work. I mean, it's just, I think it'll be hard to equal what they did in Vegas with anything that they're going to do if they're going to go decentralized at all. And I'm with you. How can you do something so grand and so spectacular and then just go meh the year afterwards? Like, you should be trying to find ways, like the NFL does, to make it bigger and better. And I understand that clearly a large percentage of the kids drafted at the National Hockey League draft will not be in the NHL next year, like you have in the National Football League. But it's still something that you did so well. Now build off of that, and it's unfortunate that that's not going to be the case. Because, I mean, listen, Celine Dion coming up and making the pick for the Canadians, Michael Buffer coming out and doing the stuff for the Flyers. Like, it's really hard to equal that. And it was really cool to watch the first round. And waiting to see who was going to come out and make each team selection. And even the one San Jose Shark fan bellowing off the top of the show when Joe Thornton comes out. Like, that's the best way to kick things off. And so I'm with you. You got to go back to Vegas. I would say, like, the World Juniors every 3 years, where it comes back to Canada. So just go back to Vegas every 3 years and work off of that.
No one would complain. And Dolan, just give your fellow owners a nice deal on that Sphere rental for the night and for a couple days. But man, the funny thing was, so the draft went until 1 o'clock or so on the Saturday. Yeah. And like, they came out an hour in advance and said, just so you know, everyone's got to be out of here in an hour. And they were still picking because, I mean, they had 3 more shows in that venue that night.
Yeah,
like,
perfect.
1 o'clock off the floor, 1:30 out of the building. So I hope all the writers had their copy done before or get back to the media workroom at the Encore. Anyways, development camp this week. Before we actually get to development camp, a couple significant signings of Winnipeg Jet players. David Gustafson and Logan Stanley each get inked, and for them, a little bit of security for the next couple of years, and a chance to come in and continue to solidify their spots as everyday NHLers.
Yeah, I think it's important, and I'm really excited for Logan Stanley. I feel like he's going to get a bigger opportunity this time around with Scott Arniel. This is his chance again. And to his defense, he hasn't really been given that everyday opportunity to prove that he can be an everyday NHLer. And maybe this is that year. And I have all kinds of time for David Gustafson too. This is a guy that's paid his dues, continues to work hard, is grateful. And I think he can be an everyday NHLer down the road here. But you touched on it. You said there's security there for the both of them, and a little less pressure. Obviously the everyday pressure of being an NHLer is there, but I think both players are well deserving of the 2-year deals they were given, and I look forward to seeing what both will do coming into camp and going into next season.
Well, they're both assets for the club. I'm kind of on the other side of you. I'm a lot more excited for David Gustafsson. And listen, I mean, like Logan, I'm not here to slag Logan. I mean, but he, over the course of the last 4 years, has played a lot at times, and sometimes he's been out of the lineup because, I mean, let's face it, you got to play
Injuries.
Your best guys.
Yeah.
And I think for him, he'll be in that third pairing or press box mode. And the big question is Ville Heinola. I mean, Ville's the guy that hasn't really had that. I think he gets it this year.
Right.
And again, the makeup of that third pairing is going to be really interesting, assuming that Colin Miller, is on that right side right now. And again, you've got a guy like Dylan Coughlin that'll get a chance. Like I just am excited about the level of like a new coach, and I think no one having their spot already etched in stone for guys to come in and compete and be the best and earn that spot as opposed to being given it. And Stanley, he's got the contract, but he's going to need to play well if he wants to be in the lineup. Ville Heinola is the same way. Yeah. I'd say the same thing for Colin Miller. Anybody else? I mean, all of those guys will be in the mix. But Gus in particular, and listen, I think Gus was in a situation that sort of opened up a little bit more by Rasmus Kupari. And listen, Kupari's got big-time wheels. Not a lot happened when he was on the ice. He was sort of an afterthought come playoff time. Gus has shown that his game has turned around into, I mean, he was always a responsible defensive player, Jamie. But I think now with this 2-year deal and seeing some of the openings in the lineup, there is a spot and a path for David Gustafsson, if he can stay healthy, to be a guy that Scott Arniel can count on in a number of situations, night in and night out.
Yeah, I think to go on top of that, Haas, is just like for years, it felt like we kind of already knew what the Jets roster was going to look like going into the regular season. That is not the case this year. And yes, certainly up front, outside of 2C right now, you could argue about certain cases being locked in. But on the blue line, you talked about the third pairing, who's going to be the extra defenseman. There's a lot of questions coming into camp about what that's going to look like. And you may think that certain guys are penciled in already, but I think training camp and the preseason are going to show a lot of things where guys have those opportunities. And I like how Kevin Cheveldayoff mentioned it, paraphrasing, of course, this is an opportunity for our younger guys to make hay here. And that to me is a good thing. That's what's going to make the training camp so exciting to watch, and day in and day out. And certainly the long preseason will be a little bit more interesting based on the fact that the battles for positioning on the depth chart heading into the 24-25 season.
So that was the official business that the team did, but there was a lot of other business happening with the prospects and development camp. I mean, you took in it all. You guys had tons of content. I mean, what was maybe a little different than last year? Last year was the big love-in. One of the individuals that was part of that, not here this year. And that was, I'm sure, a big talking
point. Who shall not be named.
Yeah. But I'll tell you what, for the other guys, and the messaging from the organization as well is come in, make the most of these few days here, and get ready to compete for spots. And Brad Lambert, I think, stole a lot of the attention and the spotlight because of the season that he had last year, the fact that he was here participating in development camp, getting ready to put his best foot forward to try to crack the NHL roster.
Yeah, as exciting as it is to welcome the new guys like Kevin He, Kieran Walton, go down the list, Alphonse Frey. I mean, to me, it's more interesting to see how players have matured and how guys are fitting in when their second go around. And, I look just at the players that you have mentioned. I look at Zach Naring, a guy, third round pick last year, played in the USHL, and a discussion that I had with him in an article I'll be writing a little bit later this week, had a concussion, pretty serious one at that. And, it took him a while to get back to going here. And so looking for, he looked more comfortable this year. You look at guys like Jacob Julian, a lot more comfortable this year. He had a tremendous year in the Ontario Hockey League. Had 78 points, I believe, with the London Knights. Went all the way to the Memorial Cup final to lose in the final. So and to go to the Ontario Hockey League conference final the year before that. So that is a ton of experience for a young player already going on. And we already know about the program that the London Knights throw out year in and year out in the Ontario Hockey League. I'm curious to see how he looked a lot more mature this year. Connor Levis, who was a 7th round pick last year, very comfortable, had a little stint with the Manitoba Moose last year, got to hang around with the team down there to the stretch drive to the playoffs, and got to travel around with the team during that first round series with Texas. So that's just invaluable experience. And then I think of another guy like Dominic DiVincentis, got injured in the playoffs last year in the opening round up in North Bay. He's about to turn pro this year, whether that's with the Moose or whether it's with Norfolk in the East Coast Hockey League. We're about to find out. But just what I've noticed is the maturity level, the quality players and individuals these guys are. I haven't even talked about Colby Barlow as another year's wiser after being drafted by the Jets last year. So it just feels like the drafting of these quality players and people really starting to stand out to me in the draft or at the development camp this year. And it was brought up by both Kevin Cheveldayoff and Jimmy Roy. It's not fair to evaluate these players because they're in different parts of their development, right? Some guys have been skating, some guys have been off for a long time, depending on their respective playoff runs or whatever happened with their team last year. So it's just about getting to know and more comfortable within the organization. And all those players that I mentioned looked a lot more comfortable this year, clearly, than they did a year ago.
Listen, the fans see what happens on the ice. And again, I try not to even speak about it too much because it is the middle of July right now, to your point.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to go there and put your best foot forward, but let's not make any swooping, judgments or whatnot based on this. But there's so much more to development camp from the organizational perspective than just being on the ice. Fill us in on what happened that we didn't see. What did the guys do? What was the organization doing with these young men when they weren't on the ice at the Hockey for All Center? We did see him at the Bomber game on Friday night, taking in a good chunk of the Winnipeg sports scene.
Yeah, great job by the content department with the prospects at the Bombers game, asking about what is a rouge. That was pretty funny to see how that happened. And it's you know what, man, to me, when you see kids struggle with what a rouge is, I just feel like that means the Canadian Football League's got to do a little bit better job promoting the game and getting it out there a little bit more. Because you and I know what a rouge is, and it's easy, it's automatic to us. But
DiVincentis nailed the waggle. I love that.
Totally, yeah, and the waggle too, right? Is he 100% nailed the waggle? But I just feel like, and I'm not like, I just feel. And I've always known this. When I worked in Sportsnet in Toronto, a lot of the young kids that worked at Highlight Row were not fans of the Canadian Football League. They were fans of the National Football League. And that, of course, with the Toronto Argonauts just down the street from us at Sportsnet. So it is where you and I are at, and an older group. CFL's done a great job retaining us. But it's just getting that next wave, that younger group of fans going, and I just feel like that was a quick little
most
heads
of
up.
Kids that didn't know were Ontario kids. Like I just like to say that. I have a feeling that if you poll Western Canadian kids, they'll have a much better grasp of all of that. And you never know. You never know. It was a trick question, but it was fun to see them. But I mean, I know in the past they've done like escape rooms. They've done kind of team building things and ways for them to. And then we've heard this as well, kind of creating relationships amongst these players. And this goes back to what Adam Lowry talked about, going back to his first development camp of guys that ended up being some of his best friends that he met in a similar week or partial part of a week here in Winnipeg after being drafted. Yeah, and that's clearly been the frame, and that was pointed out by both Jimmy Roy and Kevin Cheveldayoff. They played pickleball this year. I've never played it, but it's the new rage right now. Taking over the world.
It like there's professional pickleball leagues, which is just wild to me. But I talked to Danny Zilkin about it. He said it's so much fun. Kids had a great time doing it, and that's just about that team building. And you talked about the escape room last year. This is all about, these guys are Winnipeg Jets. The constant theme, though Huss too was talking to players. They do keep in constant contact with one another, and that's a big thing. Like, obviously the guys that play in the Ontario Hockey League know each other, but the fact that, again, I just talked about Jacob Julian, him and Connor Levis. Jacob Julian plays the Ontario Hockey League. Connor Levis played in the Western Hockey League last year. They stayed in contact all of last year. Those are those relationships you want down the road that's about team building. And this is clearly what development camp has become. Yes, it's just getting them to know the system, getting them to know the coaches and stuff that they deal with, but bringing these guys all together. And talking with Dominic DiVincentis, loves Thomas Milic. Like they're good buddies. And I said, well, how does that relationship work when you guys are competing eventually down the road for spots? And he said, well, there's that competitive side where I want to win. And he goes, he's a good guy. And I hope he says the exact same thing about me. So that I like that these guys are becoming fast friends. They're going to gather against some of them for the Young Stars tournament in Penticton in September again. But it's just the Jets organization has done a great job with this. And, of course, the Manitoba Moose coaching staff helping develop and foster these relationships that these kids are going to have and hopefully one day become Winnipeg Jet players. And on top of that, Sarah Lesky and I did a presentation on the do's and don'ts of all the interviews that these guys are going to do down the road, and had a good time doing that because we all know, if you are accessible to the media, it does help you down the road when you come up for award nominations, when the PWHL or PWHA, you want to become a media darling. And I'm not saying everybody's born for that, but it was fun having that presentation to the players, showed them great examples of what a good interview is, eye contact, explaining, not getting frustrated with us because we are very frustrating people to deal with. And I did point that out. But it was fun with Sarah and I to do that with the players, the prospects, to have that presentation.
Well, listen, it seemed like it all went well. Great turnout from fans at Hockey for All Center on the weekends as well. And here we go. We're only a couple months away from a training camp, and still a lot of intrigue as to how this roster's rounded out as we get closer to September. JT, thanks for doing this. As always, great to have you on the program.
Buddy, thanks for having me on. Enjoy your summer, and we'll see you around.
You got it. I'm already getting ready for the draft. Already getting ready for the draft. Cannot wait. Bring on the fantasy season.
There's a whole new loop this year, buddy. I can't wait to bring it out for you. So
thanks so much. There's Jamie Thomas of Jets TV. Now, Kevin Cheveldayoff spoke yesterday, finishing up training camp, and hit on a number of prospects and different prospects. Overall, though, Chevy started off just by talking about development camp overall from the GM's chair.
Well, so these camps are great. I think, just kind of made the joke we didn't have these back in our day and stuff like that. And I think it just shows how much the game has evolved. It's these players are craving knowledge. They're craving, working with coaches. They want to talk to, people. They want to learn. They want to, grow. And that's what the development camp for us, I guess the slant or the angle for us is not so much about player evaluation, but, player orientation and player education, and those are, I guess, what we tried to put in there. But it's also about relationship building, and not just with the the other players, but obviously coaches and the like. And again, for some of the kids, first time on the ice probably all summer, so you take that, and you don't use so much it with evaluation. But I know talking to Arnie, and when he talked to Jimmy and Keener about what he wanted to see at a development camp, and it was a little bit different. He talked about board play, talked about just different things that, as a coach, when you see young players come in, that kind of gives them, the edge on playing. So that was kind of what we wanted to try to accomplish here.
All right, so there's Chevy on the camp overall. You also just talked about a number of their prospects that have been here before, sort of stepping up as leaders of the group.
Well, again, I think excited about, some of the players. Well, I think, you just ask players to be themselves, and that's really what it's all about. You're not asking a player to, be or do anything that they're not. But I do think part of the, the process is you want to see how players do grow year over year, not only physically, but emotionally, mentally. And, again, that is, I think, the essence of, when you have young players, is seeing them grow, seeing them come into their own, having the confidence, not only to carry a puck down the ice, but have the confidence to go and sit with the first-year guy and say, how's it going? How's your day? Last year this was for me, and that's again, part of the process.
All right, Kevin Cheveldayoff from development camp. Now, Chevy, listen again, and a lot of this is in the at a time when we're speaking a lot about a certain situation with another top prospect that was not there in Rucker McGrory, but Chevy focusing in on the guys that they do have at development camp, and here's his thoughts on the group of prospects that were in attendance.
Well, again, I think excited about, some of the players that, we're finally going to get to see over here. Elias Solomonson, again, I think it was a great opportunity for him to go back to Sweden last year and to play, obviously, a big part in winning a championship. You can just see, again, year over year. That's the exciting thing for us, is seeing a player year over year over year, and whether it's skating or whether it's strength or whether it's, just personality, just seeing them evolve. And a player like Zach Naring there today had a great camp and great time out there. He's going to be going to college now. You're going to be looking for that next step. And then just seeing some of the players for the first time, Alphonse Frey coming and seeing, you hear about his skating, you see him, playing over in Europe, but when you get him in here with the group and you kind of, you get excited about, those opportunities in front. And, and it says a lot about a player like Brad Lambert, who, doesn't have to come here, but wants to come here and be a part of it and take on that leadership role.
All right. So read into that what you will, but certainly some praise for a guy like Brad Lambert, who, as I said, has been through this before, not necessarily needing to be there on the cusp of an NHL job, but doing everything he can to put himself in the best position to succeed come training camp. A player that has not been to training camp before, but still a very exciting prospect for the Winnipeg Jets, is Dmitry Reshevsky, who has played with Moscow Dynamo for the last few years, had 24 goals and 43 points in 67 games last year. And Cheveldayoff was asked about Reshevsky. We've seen Michkov get out of his contract and sign with Philadelphia. Any chance Reshevsky might be a Winnipeg Jet anytime soon? Here's what Chevy had to say on that.
Yeah, so we've been talking with his North American agents to try to see if where he is at within that realm. We had a Zoom call with him and his representatives last year. We would like to try to, obviously, go that direction, but there's every situation there is literally different when it comes, to that, but we're hopeful.
All right, so there's what Chevy had to say on Dmitry Reshevsky. Another player that was in a non-contact earlier on is Chaz Lucius. And Chaz, a first-round pick, incredibly talented, has had such a hard time staying healthy and on the ice. Here's what Chevy had to say about Chaz's progression.
Well, he's had to really show his resiliency. Again, he's had some different type of injuries over the course of his time, and obviously he went to junior, things were going great there, and blows his shoulder out, and obviously here the heel injury is a, I don't want to say a unique one, but it's a very unique one, and one that is going to require him to put a lot of off ice work, and he's showing it. You see it in his body frame right now. He's put on weight. He's bigger. He's put on size. Again, one thing, and I was unfortunate to have an injury as a player. One thing you learn is it tests your will and how much you love the game, how much you want to play. The off-ice work that you have to put in when you're rehabbing, an injury, that's all will and fortitude. It's just easy to say I've had enough. But when you see a player that constantly is trying to bounce back from that, that's an important trait to know that they want to play the game. They love the game.
Chevy, just speaking about the injuries that Chaz has been dealing with over the last couple of years, and expanded a little bit more on just the team sticking with Chaz through a really tough last couple of seasons.
I don't know how it's done in other organizations, but this organization here, we definitely, when we draft a player, you become part of our family, and you take care of them like they are your family, and that's an important thing. I know that our trainers, our medical staff, take a real hard interest in all aspects of them. Whether it's the actual injury itself or the mental well-being of the player going through that tough time.
All right, so Chevy talking about a bunch of guys that were here, Reshevsky that wasn't here. Of course, there had to be the mandatory question for a Rutger McGroarty update. Scott Billick threw that one at Chevy, and this is what he had to say on that.
This might be our last time to ask you before the fall. Any update on Rutger, that situation?
You would have it if it was.
Yeah, well, how about if it was? All right, and one more clip from Chevy before we get to some Bomber talk with Hammer. You know, a number of new players have entered into the mix. Hayden Fleury, Dylan Coughlin, Jared Anderson-Dolan, Mason Shaw as well. Chevy just touched on quickly on those signings for the Bombers, or for the Jets.
Well, you know, again, free agency, you know, there's different opportunities as you go along. I think for us, you know, Hayden Fleury's been someone that, you know, you've scouted, you've seen for a long period of time, and you know, has experience in the league, has had some ups and downs, and you know, is a good opportunity for him, you know, and Coughlin to come in and compete and push, you know, giving, you know, the organization, you know, some depth, but also some different options. Anderson-Dolan is a player that, you know, he's kind of right there, you know, like he was, we watched him in the LA organization there. He got claimed on waivers, didn't quite, you know, play as much as maybe he had wanted, but plays hard, plays with energy. Mason Shaw plays hard, plays with energy, compete. You know, so there's going to be lots of competition, you know, at those levels.
All right, so there's Chevy from Jets development camp. We'll have more on that throughout the week when we hook up with Mike and with Ken and Marat later on this week. But we're going to get to the Bombers right away. Huge thanks to our friends at Princess Auto for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. And nice to see the Bombers get a win at Princess Auto Stadium. And they're going to try to do it again on Friday against the Calgary Stampeders. If you are heading to the game, make sure to check out the Princess Auto tailgate zone adjacent to the stadium, facing the U-Lot beforehand. $5 beers, $3.50 poppin' hot dogs, some great entertainment, inflatables, and whatnot for the family. It is the place to be before the game. And, of course, Princess Auto Stadium is the place to be Friday night as the Bombers take on the Calgary Stampeders. Princess Auto, you know it well, the place where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Pop by and visit them on Panet Road or Portage Avenue West in Winnipeg, or shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. I imagine there's going to be another large shipment of Canadian Club to the stadium in time for Friday's game, because, as has been the case early on, another great crowd, and a lot of that crowd having a very, very good time. And a big part of that down at the stadium is Canada's favorite Canadian whiskey, Canadian Club, the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, available throughout Princess Auto Stadium, along with the rest of the Beam Suntory family of spirits. Also, a lot of people enjoying, or maybe trying for the first time, the great taste of Canadian Club and ginger ale, available in cans at the games. You can pick those up at your local beer store as well the next time you're popping in. And again, for the entire family of Canadian Club, spirits, and more, pop by your local Manitoba Liquor Mart. Say, shout out to our friends at Wallace & Wallace as well, the fencing and overhead door experts in town. If you have the needs in when it comes to fencing, they have got you covered. I mean, if you just need the security and protection of a new fence, or if winter did a number on your old one, they've got it all sorts of fences for you: vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood. And if you need a new garage door as well, they'll match your house with something perfect, because they got the largest selection of overhead garage doors around as well. 452-2700 is the number to call. The Wallace & Wallace team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate. You can also visit them at wallacefences.com, or pop down to their showroom on Lawson Crescent off of Kenniston. And hey, wedding season is upon us, guys. If you're looking into the closet and realize that you need to up your menswear game, get on down to F Apparel at 190 Smith Street downtown. Custom suits beginning at just $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an incredible selection of menswear accessories. If you are having a wedding or are in a wedding party, make sure to talk to the guys at F about a 15% discount for all the fellows when you get your suits at F Apparel. 190 Smith Street downtown. Find out more information, make an appointment for a fitting online at F. That's EPHapparel.com. All right, CarCast today with my CFL 110 partner from the Winnipeg Free Press, Jeff Hamilton, who joins us now. Hammer, what's going on?
Hustler, awesome. Just wrapped up bomber practice. Kind of was supposed to have the day off, but jumped into action when needed. That's why I have a CarCast here. In fact, I was driving down the street and I was listening to just your boring music radio, just one of the dials. I forget what it was, and then I was like, "Holy smokes! It's 2:00. It's time." So I pulled over, and here we are, and let's get her done, man. How are you? What's up? What am I missing? What am I missing here with the orange and yellow or white thing? What am I? Oh, sorry.
I'm ready for tomorrow. I'm ready for tomorrow, man. And you know what a scene that was in the stadium in the second half of the game when the Bombers were, continuing to grind out that victory. And I mean, you could audibly hear around the stadium the cheers when hundreds of people that were following that thrilling penalty shootout on their phones saw Canada score the final goal and win. It was, hey, you know what? You gotta. People wanted to have the cake and eat it too. They weren't willing to miss the Bomber game to go watch a historic game for Canada soccer, but got a chance to do both. So, So yes, I'm going to have the red on for the next couple days heading into the big game against Argentina tomorrow night. But I'll tell you what, it was just, what a way to start off the weekend. The Bombers getting their first win of the season, Canada getting that win. Everyone was in a good mood, but especially those individuals in blue and gold led by Chris Streveler. This was a team. And we haven't been in a situation like this it's funny, it went all the way back to 1998 when the team had started 0-5. That, I believe, is the Reinbold years. And with all due respect to Reinbold, who's an absolute beauty, you do not want to be compared in Winnipeg for Bomber seasons to anything to do with that Reinbold year. And, hey, it all starts with one, and they got it. Great performance by the offensive line. The defense, it looked very different than a Zach Collaros-led offense, but the bottom line was they got the job done. What did you think of the Bombers getting win number 1 of the season?
Yeah, that 0-5 date that you set back, 1998, I think that was Jeff Reinbold era maybe, but if it was, I was also the water. 0-10. I was also the water boy for that. Me and my twin brother were water boys. My dad was a corporate sponsor of his company, so we were water boys for that training camp. So yeah, full circle here, I guess. But it was interesting, right? Throughout this whole process, anyone that was paying attention to the Bombers, anyone listened to any interviews, read any stories, they were pretty cool and collected throughout this whole month. And, you wanted to see where the threads were kind of being pulled at and where this thing could kind of unravel. But, I will say this, as cool and collected as they were, there was a lot of pressure on them. There was nerves in that room there. You start to question things when you're losing, you start to question some of your methods. Of course, the Bombers, given the success they've had over the last, few years here, knew that they're, whatever they had installed, whatever, they were doing while it wasn't working on the field wasn't necessarily need to be thrown in the garbage. So I think there was a lot of relief there. The actual game, that's, I asked Chris Streveler today, why should I be shocked that you are the same person that you were in 2019, willing to put your body and life on the line every single play, essentially, and how sustainable that is. But at the end of the day, it was back to old-fashioned bully ball, Huss. It was, put it on the ground and shove it down their throats, essentially. And, that hadn't been done through the first 4 games of the year, not even close. So it was a good game for Chris Streveler. It was a great game for Brady Oliveira. It was a great game for the offensive line that has taken their fair shots here through the first 4 games of the year. So, there were a lot of things to like in that game of a Bombers fan. And I think at the end of the day, there's a weight lifted off their shoulders, because while they were acting cool, I don't think it was as comfortable, as they were acting in that locker room through the first 4 weeks of the season.
We could spend a lot of time talking about that running game and the resurgence of the offensive line. Chris Streveler talked about how they challenged them, but I actually want to start with the defense. Because the defense, minus the BC game, and listen, BC's been torching a lot of teams. We saw them just humiliate the Ticats last night.
Yeah.
The defense, despite the injuries and the guys that have been in and out of the lineup, has really kept them in games so far. And I thought they took that even to another level. And you could tell their confidence is increasing by the game as well. That was a great performance by Jordan Younger's squad on the other side of the football.
Yeah, I mean, we've been saying that for much of the year, minus maybe one game. The defense, especially with all the injuries they've suffered, particularly to their defensive line, you kind of waiting for them to fall off a cliff. And they had a bit of a hiccup earlier in the season. They played the first couple games. I forget which exact game it was, but they weren't that great. That was that BC game, of course, being torched for 500 yards and almost 400 through the air. But rebounded nicely, against these guys. And I thought that, the biggest issue with the defense, if they're, and there's issues all over the lineup. I was going to say, if there is an issue, of course there's an issue. If you're an 0-4 team, there's issues everywhere. But the biggest issue for the defense, or despite playing some pretty good football through the first month of the year, was the takeaways. They weren't making those plays. Head coach Mike O'Shea was lamenting that after the losses, that we'd ask, great effort from your defense, gave you a shot to win this game, and he would agree with that, but then kind of lightly counter with the fact that they weren't creating the turnovers that this defense has kind of become known for over the last few years. And then that's really changed over the last couple of games. Through the first 3 games, they had 2 takeaways. Through the last 2, including that loss to Calgary the week before this past week, they've had 5. And so they're trending in the right direction. They're making the plays when they come to them. And I think that was pretty evident against the Redblacks. Now, of course, Drew Brown getting injured. He wasn't cooking much anyways before he got injured right before half. I think he was 2 for 6 for not a lot of passing yards, but being able to limit a quarterback as mobile as him, Drew Brown's not going to kill you with runs necessarily, but like Zach Collaros, he does some of his best work when he escapes the pocket. So being able to limit him, then of course Dustin Crum, his replacement afterwards, I thought it was a great effort from the defense, and certainly I think has been more good than bad from that unit this season.
To me, the moment of the game where I certainly felt like, okay, the Bombers are winning this football game, was late in the second quarter when they grabbed the football and went 11 plays, 0 passes, 11 runs, and literally ran it down the throat of the Ottawa defense in for 6. And listen, we know what Streveler's capable of doing. We know what Brady Oliveira is capable of doing, but the running game is a sum of the parts all around. And the offensive line have been justifiably criticized early on for not quite getting it done. To me, the offensive line's performance in that drive and in the game overall, maybe the best thing coming out of this game, because as we've said, the foundation of the Bombers for a long time has been great Canadian talent and winning the line of scrimmage. They hadn't been doing it enough. They did it in a big, big way on that drive, and I think that really set the tone for the rest of the game.
Yeah, when I mentioned that return back to that bully ball, that's the exact drive I was referring to. I mean, that was, as you mentioned, 11 rushes. I don't think anyone in Winnipeg, I mean, Mike O'Shea said after the game there might have been some RPOs mixed in there. Yeah, right. I don't think they had any interest in throwing the ball in that drive, and I think Ottawa knew exactly that. And so when you consider that Ottawa knew they were trying to shove it down their throats, and the fact that we actually were successful in doing so, harkens back to the old style of Bombers football that we've been pretty much used to, and you could probably argue after this year spoiled with, over the last few years, right? That's been the bread and butter of this team. It's owning the line of scrimmage. It's having the offensive line, put their physicality on the line and move the line of scrimmage for a couple yards and obviously move the chains. And we saw that throughout that drive. That was 70 rushing yards of the 212, I believe. It's certainly over 200 rushing yards that Oliveira and Brady Oliveira and Chris Streveler combined for. And that was, I think to a lot of fans, a thing of beauty. I mean, that's, that was what the Bombers used to do. They used to mix in a lot of throwing touchdowns in with that, but that used to get the crowd going, more than anything. And I'll add to that bully ball stuff. Huss was at the end of the game, right? Where it was just, vintage Bombers where you give the ball back to us. We're just going to ice this game with our, ability to move the chains. And I thought that was a step in the right direction. So yeah, a lot of good things here. Of course, the Bombers seem to be getting a little bit healthier here. Zach Collaros was back at practice. They got some help in Lucky Whitehead, finally came to practice. So things seem to be turning up a little bit for the Bombers after what were some pretty close calls, right? I mean, you kind of knew that this was coming. You didn't know when it was going to come, but when you lose your 3 games by a combined 9 points, and then you're back at home, a place where you've dominated for large chunks here, kind of all created the perfect storm and got the Blue Bombers back to the kind of football that many people are used to watching and seeing.
Well, let's get to practice today, where you were covering it for the Winnipeg Free Press. You mentioned that they were still pretty businesslike and they were somewhat upbeat despite being 0-4. But winning does sort of change everything. They got that win. Was there a notice, a jump, or a better atmosphere around practice today? Or is it basically the same thing that they've been despite the record?
Yeah, same thing. I'd almost feel like it was a little salty today, to be honest with you. Now, there was lots of smiles. The Dream Factory was at practice. So there was a lot of, smiles and hugs and that kind of stuff after practice. But I thought they were a little ornery today in their interviews, to be honest with you. And there's certainly no celebrating. I mean, this is still a 1-4 team. Yeah. They're not proud of where they're at this point. I mean, even if they have been, even if they haven't been beating themselves up publicly, they still know they got a lot of work here ahead of them that, it doesn't matter. Great that you beat an Ottawa Redblacks team that, finished last place in the East the last couple of years. But, you got to kind of go on from here. So I think it is much like they weren't lamenting the losses heavily. They're not going to be patting themselves on the back. Now, that was a much different scene after the game. I'm not to switch from practice to game, but post game, that was where the joy was in. I haven't seen the room look or feel like that for some time. Guys had, packs of beer nestled under their arms. They were going to enjoy that one, but you could tell as they got back to the field today, it was all business and still the reality of being 1-4 with understanding that it's not easy to win week in and week out.
All right. Well, you mentioned that Zach was back in practice. How's he doing? And tell us about the look of the offense at practice with an eye on Friday against Calgary, mentioning that our old pal Lucky's back in town as well.
Yeah, Zach looked good today. He looked, he was escaping the pocket, wasn't limited at all, was making his throws. Almost, made you feel that this must have been a really close call last week, just based on what you saw from him. He didn't even ease into practice today. It wasn't like he was limited or, as I mentioned, was doing a lot of the things Zach Collaros does. So in that respect, obviously a super big positive. I wonder just how close he was. He did mention that, they ruled him out of the game fairly early into last week. I still think it's majorly precautionary. I think they looked at the opponent, where they are in the season, felt like, Chris Streveler's a good backup, someone who could add a wrinkle to it. So, he didn't look worse for wear at all today. While it wasn't confirmed, my expectation would be that Zach Collaros plays this week as they welcome Calgary for that rematch from a couple of weeks ago. But offense looked good. I mean, Lucky isn't working with the ones yet, so it'll be interesting to see where exactly, or when exactly, he'll be tapped to join the lineup. If for those fans thinking that he's going to get off a plane today, or I guess he got in on Friday, he's going to step on the field today and be ready for this week, that's ultimately been ruled out. He still needs some work to get done, learning the playbook, getting acclimated to the offense and all those things. And you also got to put in the fact here too, man. Now, I know it's not a Naaman Roosevelt situation. When I say that, anyone who knows Naaman Roosevelt, veteran receiver who was picked up by the Bombers, I don't know, a couple of years ago, at the end of his career, Lucky now being 32, you could argue, he's certainly on the back nine of his career. But they brought in Naaman Roosevelt. Now, they weren't suffering the same kind of injury issues at receiver, but they don't bring anybody in unless they do have injuries. So Naaman Roosevelt never got into the lineup. Now, I'm not suggesting that Lucky Whitehead won't get into the lineup, I'm just not guaranteeing that it's going to be next week. We'll see what happens. I mean, there is obviously an advantage for Lucky, not just having played for this offense. I know it was under LaPolice, but a lot of the same things are there with Buck Pierce now at the controls. And ask anybody who's been in this league long enough, the offensive schemes don't exactly change. What changes is the lingo or the verbiage that offensive coordinators use. So I think it's just getting up to speed on that, and we'll see what he can do, man. He's 32 years old. He went into the offseason after years with the BC Lions and didn't get the contract that he wanted. He was getting paid, north of $200,000 for the last few years. I think he wanted something similar to that. I don't think his production, over the last year and some of his injury issues warrants that. So I think that was probably why he wasn't with a team. But I know he's happy to be here. He's looking at this as a major opportunity to get his career back on track. Says he's got plenty of gas left in the tank, and so let's give him that opportunity. He was an exciting player when he was here. He was a new player when he was here, right? I'll remind you, he wasn't even on the Grey Cup roster. So he obviously blossomed in Vancouver and with the Lions, and so if he has any of that juice left, even he did acknowledge that he's older now and that it's not about getting that extra yard. It's about making that smart and effective play. So, do with that what you will, but I do think it's a much needed addition to this team. And, just continue on my rant just for another second, is that the reason why I'm not 100% sure about when he plays is because, Mike O'Shea keeps saying that he really, really likes the guys that are in house, the Josh Johnsons, the Ontario Wilsons, the Clericuses, the guys who have been able to crack the lineup. Myron Mitchell, you've been able to crack the lineup because of these injuries. Why he likes his receivers when you have one passing touchdown in 5 games, I guess that's something, it's his answer or whatever. I think it's a loyalty issue, but, all said, I think the quicker that Lucky Whitehead can get into this lineup and on this roster, the better.
Yeah, well, Friday night was not a night where any of the receivers wearing blue were going to shine. That was
Oliveira finished with a team high 37 yards as he was tearing them, torching them up in the run game. Yeah, exactly.
It was it was a time to run the football and establish that line of scrimmage. They got the job done. We talk offense and defense. Should mention special teams for a minute, and I guess we now can say unequivocally that Sergio Castillo wasn't full of it talking about the chip balls in week 1, because since then he has been absolutely phenomenal. And another, 6 of 6 says all you need to say. He has been so important, and first of all, in keeping the Bombers in games that they've lost, but arguably he doesn't have that sort of game that he has on Friday night. We could be talking about a very different fourth quarter.
Yeah, absolutely. I went back through his, you often write these kind of things, like, or you say them on shows, like, it's arguably his best game as a CFLer or with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and you just, it's recency bias, obviously, and but it was a special performance, so I went back and looked at it. It was his best CFL performance. Now I'm saying I'm putting regular season on top of that because I don't need Bomber fans coming at me when he went 5-on-5. In the Grey Cup game and battled those strong wins, even if the kicks weren't as long as they were on Friday. But yeah, as far as regular season goes, he's never gone 6 for 6. He's gone 5 for 5 2 other times in the regular season in his career. He went 6 for 7 one game, but to go 6 for 6 and to do that with 2 53-yarders, there's some kickers in this league that you don't even bring out for 53-yard attempts. And then another one at 49, and the other ones were fairly easy compared to those 3. But as you mentioned, a guy blew up. I don't want to say blew up, was very frustrated with the microchip balls earlier in the season, and since then he's let his foot do the talking. He's been perfect ever since, both on field goal attempts and 1-point converts. And, we've talked about this lots on this show and elsewhere, that like, it was really, and this isn't my, opportunity to dump on Mark Leggio or whatnot, but, before Mark Leggio came into play, it was Justin Medlock. Now it's Sergio Castillo, and in between, right? They kind of switched philosophies. This team knew the importance of having a kicker and the importance of a kicker being able to trot them out in tough situations. And I guess it's just a really roundabout way of saying, this team's really happy that Sergio Castillo's here. They're happy that he's getting the job done. I mentioned this in my 5 takeaways yesterday. It was a bit of an ordeal to get this guy signed over the offseason. And it wasn't like, this wasn't a Lucky Whitehead situation. Castillo wasn't demanding money. Like, he's in and around, he's above league minimum, but he's in and around, where the kickers make, like the lower end kickers make, and he's been worth every dime. If I was the Blue Bombers, I'd be asking him what his plans are for 2025, that year that they're hosting the Grey Cup, and see what his plans are for next season. Because the way he's going now, he's not losing anything. And as we know, kickers don't exactly get worse with age. Sometimes they get better.
It's funny you bring that up, because it was a Medlockian performance, without a doubt. And if you go back to when the Bombers signed Medlock, that was at a time when they weren't this offensive buzzsaw. They were playing in a ton of close games, and often your kicking game was the difference between winning and losing. Now,
well, and that's why they grabbed Medlock. They knew that their offense was not going to be, they weren't going to be the Calgary Stampeders. They knew they were going to have to trot a guy out for 55-yarders, 56-yarders on a fairly regular basis. Sorry, Huss.
And that's basically where we're at right now. I mean, especially when you think about the injuries, the losses shown, Kenny Lawler, Zach Caleros, like, this Bomber team is not going to be blowing the doors off teams the way they had in recent years.
No.
And if the Bombers are going to make the playoffs and be a threat come playoff time, these are going to be some games that'll be one on the defensive side of the football, offensive line, and the kicking game, which has been brilliant outside of that first game of the season. Hammer, we'll save our bullets, but we've got a lot to talk about in CFL 110 this week. So just some great games and a huge tilt in the West that we can spend some time on. BC and Saskatchewan playing for first place coming up this Saturday.
Looking forward to it, man. It's my favorite part of the league. There's no shortage of drama, and this week was no exception. So looking forward to doing that with you on Wednesday. And yeah, man, it's awesome. If you haven't checked out our show, go check it out. Share it with your friends, family. Hate watch, love watch, whatever you want to do. It's always appreciated, but certainly lots of fun things to talk about in the 3-down game for sure.
I will talk to you then, my friend. Thanks for doing this.
Take care, my friend. Have a good one.
Keep your eyes open. Wednesday, another edition of CFL 110 on Winnipeg Sports Talk, presented by Garage Living Winnipeg. All right, we got to get to the soccer. What a win for Canada on the weekend. Before we do that, well, I will raise a Little Brown Jug generic lager to the lads representing Canada at the Copa America. It was a great weekend for winning for the Bombers and for the Team Canada. It was a great weekend for a few Little Brown Jugs. If you haven't tried generic lager, may I suggest you do at your next opportunity. It's your basic lager, just better. Little Brown Jug made the taste you crave with the name that says it all. With this impressively standard lager, whether you're at a Jets game, Gold Eyes game, or watching from home, grab a cold one and cheers. Generic lagers available along with all the great Little Brown Jug offerings at Little Brown Jug in the Exchange District at 336 William Avenue. Also at your local LC or vendor. And now, of course, at the ballpark and the arena downtown. Big shout out to our friends at Little Brown Jug. The guys at Royal Sports are busy, and I have a feeling they're probably, I got this at Royal. They've got a lot more great Canada gear at Royal. If you want to support Canada's soccer programs, perfect time to get some gear because you've got this week to wear it. And then our women taking on the world, defending their Olympic championship in a few weeks over in Paris. Royal Sports has a great selection of Canadian soccer gear and soccer jerseys from around the world with many of the top teams, along with NFL merch coming in time for the season, tons of Bomber gear, Jets gear, and more. Not to mention soccer, softball, baseball, tennis, running, bikes, a massive Yeti section for you campers on the King Skate, Snow, and Surf side. It's all there at the Sports Superstore, Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway. And give them a follow on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina for the latest merchandise drops and sale information down at Royal Sports. Cheers to our friends at the Beer Can. What a glorious weekend to get out to the Beer Can. A great spot to have a little brown jug. They've got all of Winnipeg's best local beers there, other drink offerings, and amazing food from the geniuses behind the Cosmos Space Cantina and Hoagie Boys. So with the weather gorgeous, head on down to the Beer Can just over the Osborne Bridge, adjacent to the Granite Curling Club. And again, Hoagie Boys down at South Osborne cranking out the best sandwiches in town. They're open 7 days a week, and can also get the great food by the Cosmos gang at next door at 116 Sherbrooke in the heart of Wolseley. But tomorrow night, you're probably wondering where the heck should we go to watch the game. Well, listen, if there's a big game going on, it's at Boston Pizza. Get your crew together at your local BP for the big game on the screen with the big sound, ice-cold schooners, world-famous BP wings, gourmet pizzas, and more. And if you are staying at home, you can always get the great taste of Boston Pizza by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. Coolbet Lines, Assiniboia Downs picks coming up. But after such a big win on Friday and a huge rematch against the world number one Argentines and Lionel Messi, we had to bring in our pal Gareth Wheeler from One Soccer to talk about Canada at the Copa. Gareth, it is great to have you on the program, and even better considering the topic we're getting to. Wow.
A positive Canadian soccer story? Is it possible? We're back in that space. I feel like we're living in 2022 now, Hustler. So, it's been a really fun couple weeks, and let's hope it continues.
You know, it's funny you mentioned 2022, because I can remember on this program being really dialed into the qualifying for the World Cup. And I would mention, after games, for people to pay attention to this stuff. I mean, trust me, you'll be happy that you did. And, I had a number of people saying, I'm glad you sort of beat us over the head with that soccer stuff because, man, I'm into it and it's great. But this, it sort of feels like this again, because it was great that the team was in the tournament and in the competition. It's one thing to be a participant, it's another thing to have results. And Gareth, it seems like the entire world's paying attention to Canada. And I mean, our friends south of the border right now are apoplectic right now because Canada's doing some great things, and the U.S. program absolutely face-planted at home. It's been a wild couple weeks.
It has been. I said it's been a great Copa America unless you're American or Mexican. And I guess we can add Brazil now to the equation with them getting knocked out of this tournament in the quarterfinal. Like, two major tournaments with the Euros and Copa America going on simultaneously. And look at the nations who are left standing in those: Argentina, Colombia, Uruguay, and Canada. And then in the Euros, England, Netherlands, Spain, and France. So the fact that a lot of eyeballs are watching these glamour, ties, these semifinals that are about to play out in Canada is going to be one of those 8 nations. It's kind of like a pinch yourself moment. And remember, Canada backed their way into this tournament. I called the game last November, Canada at home against Jamaica, where they completely capitulated. They lost 3-2 at BMO Field in Toronto, and they had to go through a qualifying game, a one-off against Trinidad and Tobago to punch their ticket to this tournament. So they went through the back door, but they, just like the Kool-Aid man, they've broken through the wall. And I think it's not just that they've made the semifinal, it's about how they played as well. It's just been impressive from a group that I think many people worldwide underestimated entering this tournament.
Well, let's dig in. And I mean, before we talk about some of the athletes representing our country, I think we got to talk about the coach. I mean, Jesse Marsh. And listen, a lot of people were familiar with John Herdman. He was a great rah-rah guy, but it seemed like that message had maybe fallen flat. And I mean, the team was in a bit of, it was in dire straits, frankly. And they made the move. I love the Marsh conversation. Again, bring it back to the Americans, because there's so many people pissed off that he's not coaching their team right now. But tell us about Jesse, how he ended up with the Canadian team, and then just your thoughts on the difference that he's made at the helm.
Yeah, it's funny what you mentioned about Herdman, because it ended in such a a negative way after so much positive for so long, like the team boycotting a game, and then Herdman flirting with taking a job in New Zealand and calling out the association publicly. And a lot of the reports and the unnamed sources that came out with these negative stories, people are just wondering, like, what is going on here? But Marsh has come in with a real positive attitude and with an impressive resume as well. He, of course, was a player in Major League Soccer, coached CF Montreal, or the Montreal Impact at that time, for a short stint, got involved with the Red Bull side of things, and they own a bunch of teams across North American and European football, and ended up managing Champions League football with Red Bull Salzburg as well as with Red Bull Leipzig. His latest stop was with Leeds United, a historic club in English football in the Premier League, and his stay was short, but he still left an impression. And Canada, it took him well over 200 days to fill that coaching role, but through a rigorous search and bringing in former players into the equation, they landed on Marsh. And everyone I talked to about that hiring just was so impressed with Marsh. The guy speaks 4 languages, he's engaging, he's smart, and they just thought he could bring new ideas to the program, perhaps some things that the program was lacking. And I wasn't sure how it was going to play out because the Red Bull style is very pronounced, it's very scrappy. I just wasn't sure if it would apply to the international game. But so far, so good. I mean, he goes out and plays a couple friendlies against the Netherlands and France in the build-up to this tournament and playing Argentina, and they beat in every game they played in thus far. And the team has responded and dealing with Marsh. He's been a pleasure to deal with. He's a gentleman, and I get why the players are kind of rallying around him right now. So it's been a dream start for him as manager. And remember, this is just one big stop in the build-up to 2026. Like, he's only been on the job for less than 2 months now. And the fact that he's now in a Copa America semifinal, it's a testament to him and his players.
It seems like one of the biggest parts of the success that he's had has been getting the focus of every member of that team on the pitch. And let's granted, there's been a lot going on around our soccer program for a number of years, predating the trip to Qatar. But it seems like a lot of the noise has been eliminated. And right now, these young men are focusing on representing their country to the best of their ability. And the results are showing for themselves.
Yeah, you're not hearing about, the CBA anymore or anything like that. Is it a coincidence? Probably not, because some players have left the program, some individuals have left the program, and new players have come in. And I was always told throughout that process that the big dogs, the Davies, that didn't care about any of that. They just wanted to represent Canada and just go out there and be the best version of themselves. And that's what it seems like they're back to. They're collectively back focusing. The mentality in all their games, Hustler, has been fantastic. There's a togetherness about this group. There's been really good moments in games, but I feel like Canada haven't even played their best yet in terms of the tactics and the way that this team will inevitably, what they'll inevitably end up becoming. I think you've seen glimpses, but it hasn't been the complete package. But just the mentality has been superb, and they haven't been awestruck by anything that they've faced over the course of this tournament yet.
I'll say it, as someone that watched those games in the Middle East in the World Cup, I mean, they seem to be playing much better. Like, I don't want to say that they were starstruck there, because they were right in that Belgium game. Croatia game sort of fell apart, but I mean, similar to this tournament, there weren't huge expectations for them, but they seem to have played to their potential far more in this tournament, even just a couple months into the Marsh reign.
And what's incredible is that Marsh has leaned into some very young players, and he came in needing a new center back partnership. Like, Steven Vittori had moved on. This team had serious defensive issues over the course of the last year and a half, and they've seemingly been solved. This team has been airtight defensively. Clean sheet against France. They only gave up 2 in the second half to Argentina. Clean sheet against Peru and Chile. Like, these are good defensive results. And 2 young center backs and a young player named Moise Bombito. It's one of those things where you're sitting around the bar watching this team play. You're like, where did that player come from? I've never heard of him. Well, Moise Bombito, 2.5 years ago, was playing at a community college in Council Bluffs, Iowa. just completely off the radar, a young player out of Montreal looking for his opportunity. He inevitably, got a transfer, played NCAA football for New Hampshire and was selected in the first round of the MLS draft a year ago. But his first season in Major League Soccer was derailed. He only played about a dozen games because he suffered an injury. So he is so new, not only to the Canadian men's national team, but really professional football. Yet he stepped in and he's taken on Kylian Mbappe and Lionel Messi, and he's like one of the fastest, most athletic players on the field. You're like, where did this guy come from? It's incredible, his story. Derek Cornelius, like he was an outcast. It didn't work out with Vancouver Whitecaps, and he's gone abroad to Europe, and now he's found a home with the top team in Sweden called Malmo, and he stepped right in, and he's been an absolute rock at the back. So you found some of these young players who've stepped up into increased roles and have done it seamlessly. So full credit for the manager for trusting these players and for the players taking advantage of the opportunity that's presented themselves.
Well, a guy I got to talk to you, ask you about that I wasn't particularly familiar with up until this tournament is Jacob Schaffelberg. And I mean, he has been an absolute star. And listen, I know that people refer to him jokingly as the Maritime Messi, which is just an unbelievable nickname. And then to see him and Sid Crosby in the dressing room afterwards, I mean, what a proud moment for Nova Scotians that would have been, and Canadians in general. But, I mean, Schaffelberg, for a guy playing MLS in Nashville, he has been one of the top players for Canada and has really opened some eyes around the world. I imagine he's not for long for North America.
We'll see, because he's consistently been a player that's been overlooked or underrated. He's from Port Williams, Nova Scotia, a town of 500 people. I got to know Jacob and his family when he played for Toronto FC. He played for a prep school called Berkshire College in New England, and lit it up like a player named Jack Harrison, who now plays in the Premier League. And Toronto FC waited on him. Then head coach Greg Vanney loved the player, but they had to wait for him to become a homegrown, go through the MLS process in order to give him a call up. And he immediately became a player that Vanney relied upon. The problem was Vanney left Toronto FC, new coaches came in, there was instability there. The team suffered, and Schaffelberg just fell down the pecking order. He ended up being traded to Nashville really for like a bag of balls and cones. It was nothing. And it seems foolish in retrospect that managers didn't see what he could bring to the table, because he's so fast. He plays direct. He's lively. He's a handful to deal with. He didn't get his first Canada start until last week. So even for Jesse Marsh, he sees this player. He's like, well, he fits my style of play. I want players that can run, who can compete, who can be a threat in behind the back line. And that's exactly what he's brought to the table. And honestly, like, you're not going to meet a nicer young man than Jacob Schaffelberg. So I'm thrilled for him, because much like a lot of young Canadian soccer players, the rise, in the professional ranks or even the national team ranks hasn't been seamless, right? He's had to work really hard and bide his time, and now it's come. And now I think you're seeing what kind of players, not just in Schaffelberg, but what kind of players in this country just need that opportunity. So I'm thrilled for the kid right now.
It's also, I think, really sparked a conversation about MLS players, and looks great on MLS. Like the amount of minutes played by MLS players for Canada and the results they've had in comparison to a USA or Mexico, I think speak for the development of that league. And I'll tell you what, we all remember Borjan Sweatpants holding it down. I mean, another MLSer from the Portland Timbers, Crepeau. I remember watching the first game against Argentina and just being blown away by just how tenacious. You want to talk about doing everything you can to get a finger on the ball. It was him, like with the exception of the goal against in the last game from center, which probably would like to have back. He's been absolutely incredible right now, and I'm not sure we're having this conversation without the goalkeeping that Canada's been getting from Crepeau.
And he's another player that's being perennially underrated. He's not the biggest goalkeeper. Like in soccer, you want a big goalkeeper, 6'4", 6'5". Crepeau doesn't touch 6 feet tall. So he was a smaller goalkeeper, but he's played to his strengths, which are that confidence, on the ball, on the ground, decision-making. Another really good guy. In the 2022 MLS Cup final, Max Crepeau broke his leg in the game. It was devastating at that time, and it ruled him out of the World Cup as well. He was going to be the number 2 to Milan Borjan, but certainly a player that would have been in contention. That was a career-threatening injury, but he's rallied around. He's rebounded. He's put himself in the conversation to be the starter. Remember, Jesse Marsh, in his first game in charge, it was Dane Sinclair, another goalkeeper, that started that game, not Max Crepeau. But Crepeau came away with a clean sheet against France, and he's run with the job ever since, and he's risen to the challenge. Look, do I think his ceiling is as high as some of the best goalkeepers in the world? Absolutely not. I think that teams need to challenge him in the air because that's a perceived weakness in his game. But for what he's being asked to do for this Canadian team, he's done everything and more he's been asked about, what he's been called upon to do in these games. So let's hope that continues, because he's going to be really challenged against Lionel Messi in Argentina come Tuesday night.
Well, Gareth Wheeler with us from One Soccer here on Winnipeg Sports Talk, and we talked about Bombito and Schaffelberg and Crepeau, like the new generation that's helping propel Canada to these heights. But you can't do it without the leaders in the establishment. And I look at Alphonso Davies wearing the captain's armband, Jonathan David, Stephen Eustachio as well. I mean, thoughts on the veteran, the star players on this team, how they have approached this tournament and how they've bought into what Jesse Marsh is selling as well.
It's a great point you make, because it's almost like those role players have been the star players for Canada, and the players that you would have known about before, the superstar players in their squads, they kind of played more as role players in the team, which is a little bit unusual, but it's been effective. I think at some point, Jesse Marsh is going to need more from those players as we approach 2026, but I think they've been a little bit pragmatic for now. Davies, instead of playing higher up the field and maybe trying to do a little bit too much, is playing left back. He's the captain of this team. He's being asked to play a role, and that's what he does. Obviously, he looks thrilling. He's exhilarating when he's on the ball, but he's being asked to put in a shift defensively, which isn't always the sexiest thing to do. And it was always questioned whether that was what Alphonso Davies wanted to do. But quite frankly, I think it was astute by Marsh to put the captain's armband on Davies, on Alphonso Davies, and say, look, we need you to play a role within this team, and you're the de facto leader. And that's the role that he's taken upon, rather than trying to let his game do the talking. And I think for now, it's served him well. David has been hit and miss, but he scored the big goal against Peru that put them in a position to move on. He's got to take advantage of whatever limited opportunities pop up against Argentina on Tuesday night. And Stephen Eustachio, he's played with a very young midfielder in Ismael Kone, a player that just got a big money move to Marseille. In the top division of French football. It's a big move. It's coincided with this tournament, which has maybe been a little bit of a distraction, but he steps up and makes his penalty and does it in such a cool manner as well. And he's been playing alongside Jonathan Osorio, an older player in this team as well. So Eustachio, his responsibility is huge in this Canada team, and he's the glue that really keeps that midfield together. Look, the strength of this team is they played together. They've remained compact. They've remained connected, and they're not going to be on the ball a whole lot against Argentina. They're going to need the same recipe for success that they've kind of ridden with through this tournament if they expect to stay in this game against Messi and company on Tuesday.
Well, I'll say this, bringing us to the semifinal tomorrow night. We were all excited to see Canada play Argentina at the beginning of this tournament. I don't think we thought that this would be the first of two matchups. But Canada, to their credit, I thought showed very, very well in that match. They had scoring chances. They were in the game. It was 1-0 late, and they gave up that late one as they pressed for it. What can Canada take from their first match against Argentina, and can they hang with the number one team in the world on such a huge stage?
I hope so. Generally, when you play a team two times in such a short period of time, it basically plays in the advantage of the team that lost the first time around, because you learn something.
Perfect.
But this time around, I think that Argentina learned something about Canada, because I think it was a little bit of a surprise. You saw it, how many times an Argentine player was like played in all alone over the top because Canada was playing such a high defensive line. I'm not sure if Argentina expected that, because what Canada was trying to do, Lionel Messi, he's the best player finding space between the lines, better than anyone else in world football, still at this older age. So I think that they took away Messi's comfort zone, but they were willing to give up over the top. I think Argentina knows that now, and it's going to be a really real challenge. Do Canada play the same way with that high line? Are they willing to play that way and not get burned? Because they were almost burned on multiple occasions last time around. So it might be a little bit of a chess match to see what Marsh decides to do and how Scaloni and Argentina react. Remember, Argentina and Scaloni took an extra 10 minutes to come out of the room at halftime, which he was inevitably fined and punished for afterwards, because he knew that he needed some more time with his team to kind of walk through how Canada was playing and how to kind of come out in the second half and play a different way. And obviously Argentina was much better in the second half of that game. So let's see. Canada can match them in terms of physicality. They can match them in terms of athleticism and quickness, but they're a world champion, top players in this Argentina side. And it would be hard for me to see any result other than Argentina winning this game. As much as I want to wear that maple leaf and stick out my chest, this Argentina team, if they're not the best team in world football, they're top three, and Canada are going to be really in a difficult spot for long stretches of the game come Tuesday.
Regardless of the result tomorrow night, Gareth, how significant has this run been for Canada getting to the semifinals, and what does that mean, or what can we hope that will mean for the continued progression of our men's national team over the course of these next 2 years before hosting part of the World Cup?
We just had the debate on One Soccer. What was a bigger accomplishment, like semifinal at Copa America or qualifying for the World Cup? I mean, for me, it's qualifying for the World Cup. The World Cup is the World Cup. And the fact that Canada didn't do it for 36 years before and found ways not to, that was critically important. This tournament, they beat on a nice run. They benefited by the draw a little bit, where they haven't played some of the big dogs, especially Venezuela in that knockout round game. You prefer to play them over Ecuador or some of the other teams they could have. So I think it's been beneficial. But the knock-on effect here is creating positive stories around this team in the build-up to 2026. It's been needed, because what's been associated with this program since the World Cup is politics and division and underperforming. And now they've kind of reset that. You're like, oh yeah, I really like these players. The personalities, the way that they play, everything about this team has become really likable yet again. And I think that they needed that acceptance from the outside Canadian soccer community or Canadian sporting community. And I think that fans needed that as well. Just that little bit of a reminder about what this team's all about. So aside from the money that comes to the program and the notoriety, I just think everyone needed that feel-good story this summer. And certainly this team has absolutely done that. And let's hope that carries on over the next 2 years.
Well, I mean, kudos to you and the team at One Soccer, who's been there the entire time. I was mentioning to you beforehand, lamenting just how, I mean, you go anywhere this weekend in Canada, people are talking about this team. They're talking about the game on Friday night. They're talking about the fact that this team is playing Argentina in the semifinals of Copa America. And with the exception of a 2-minute blip from Shinetti on TSN, there is not a lot out there. Apparently there was 100 Venezuelan journalists at the game on Friday. There was 2 Canadians. I couldn't find anything on Sportsnet about it at all. And I guess TSN has the games, but in such a fractured media landscape right now, might we see our main national broadcasters buy in a little bit more and give some more support to people like One Soccer that have actually been there throughout? I mean, it benefits everyone, and certainly the team at the end. And I'll say this, and I mean, again, you guys have been doing this year over year, but it's a missed opportunity for the sport. And I would say this, having no skin in the game anymore, it's a huge missed opportunity, because this is what people are talking about right now.
Yeah. Look, One Soccer's tried to get universal coverage on cable channels across this country, but walls have been built up, obstacles have been built up, and that's still not a reality. So we're a company that's employing Canadians to cover the game of soccer. There just isn't people either working for newspapers, websites for the big networks. Like, there aren't people specifically who work in the game of soccer. There's people that jump around and cover multiple things and do a nice job when they're put into the soccer space. We just don't have enough people covering the game of soccer in this country as a paid job. Like, it's fine. You can do it if you want to do, your own whatever, but just money hasn't come into it in order to make it a sustainable industry enough yet. So we need more people covering it. All the club teams across the Canadian Premier League, across MLS. Look, we have Canadian Championship games upcoming Wednesday night. How many people are talking about that? Forge, Toronto FC, Pacific, Vancouver Whitecaps. The game is growing in this country. People are interested. Communities are interested. The Canadian Premier League will expand. League One has expanded across this country to professionalize the setup. If we don't cover these great players, then there's going to be more players that fall through the cracks and missed opportunities. I just think that now is the time. I've been saying this for years. Now is the time to invest. We have a women's league that's starting in this country. Our women's national team are going to try to make the podium for the 4th consecutive Olympics. Like, if not now, then when? And instead of, networks and whatever, just being concerned about your own product, let's think about the sport and how it can benefit everyone involved, including them. It's just, it's tough. It's a grind. And I always say this, like, this is going to be the turning point. Is this going to be the turning point? I don't know, because there's no evidence to suggest it will be, but we just need to play nice in the sandbox together and hope that the success of all of these players and what they bring create more opportunity for everyone.
Well, the one thing that I hope is that, from qualifying for the World Cup to this run, which was somewhat unexpected, can take it back to a point of prominence that will stay on this for the next 2 years heading into 2024, because it shouldn't just be something that all of a sudden shows up on everyone's radar when we have a team that has done what they've done over the past couple of years and is on this continued progression.
I hope so. I hope it's just not like a perfect storm right now, Hustler, because like Messi mania is going on right now, and MLS have really put their eggs in the Messi basket. So even Tuesday night, like, typically Argentina are the best or some of the best fans in world football, but this is also very much a Messi tournament. It's probably his last Copa America. So there's a lot of people that have become engaged because of that story. Copa America is also going on at the exact same time as Euros, which typically are a huge draw across this country anyways. So I'm hoping that this just isn't the perfect storm where we're just, it's beyond just being invested in it for the moment. I hope it's more sustainable, but we'll have to see. I'm just not sure.
Well, I have a feeling those numbers on Tuesday night are going to be massive, and there'll be a lot of Canadians that aren't familiar with Schaffelberg and Crapeau, even if they know who Davies and David are. And we'll see what happens. I cannot wait for it. Gareth, just fill people in again on One Soccer, everything that you guys have, not just for this tournament and going into Tuesday, but 12 months a year, covering the game better than anybody in our country.
That's it. I mean, look, when the major tournaments come around, it's a lot of fun, but everyone knows when you're covering any domestic sports league, it's going through the grind of regular seasons and what the less glamorous games look like. We're trying to shine a spotlight on Canadian players, coaches, administrators, people that make the game tick in this country. We're the home of the Canadian Premier League, and 5 great years of that league that have been disrupted by COVID and a bunch of crazy stuff. But this year, there's more parity in that league and high quality play than ever. Home of the Canadian Championship, semifinal doubleheader upcoming on Wednesday night, and Canadian men's, women's national team games. Not the Olympics, not the World Cup or Copa America. All those games are on One Soccer as well. So we're trying to grow this game brick by brick in this country, and hopefully we can continue to do that as the leagues and more players get more opportunities going forward as well. These are exciting times, and it's really cool to tell the story of the people that kind of weave the fabric that is Canadian soccer across this country. So we'll continue to do that to the best of our ability.
Gareth, enjoy the game tomorrow night. Keep up the great coverage, and we'll have to maybe touch base about our women going to Paris in a few weeks and try and get on that podium again with a new look team. Thanks so much. Enjoy the game tomorrow night. Appreciate you as always.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, make your plans, gang, because Canada gets another crack at Argentina in the semifinals of Copa America. The winners will meet for the championship, the winner of that game against the winner of Uruguay-Colombia, and the losers of the two games to two semis playing in the third place game coming up on the weekend. All right, we've got a couple contests to do. So hang tight. A couple of winners for our Coolbet, our new qualifiers for the Coolbet, and our AS Downs contest is coming up right away. But don't forget, guys, tough weekend for the Goldeyes. They got off to a nice start of the homestand, but lost on Saturday and Sunday. They're at 500 right now, chasing the Fargo-Moorhead Redhawks, but they've got a series against the Kansas City Monarchs beginning tomorrow night. KC just behind the Goldeyes in the standings, 3-7 in their last 10. So a big 3-game set for the Fish. Beautiful weather. Now is the time to take advantage of it and get down to the ballpark this week for Goldeyes baseball tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday down at Blue Cross Field, goldeyes.com for individual tickets, group tickets, and more. I got to shout out our friends at Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge. I've been drooling over the pictures that have been coming across the Aikens Lake socials lately of the fish that they've been pulling out. I hope to do the same in about a month. If you are thinking about a world-class fly-in fishing destination where you can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg, Aikens Lake is the spot. World-class fishing and even more world-class hospitality from our friends, the Terren family and the Aikens team. Find out more today at aikenslake.com on dwindling remaining availability for the rest of the 2024 season, or get working on a prime date for 2025. Again, aikenslake.com and at aikenslake on all of the social channels. Our Breezy Bend golf report, John Deere went crazy. Davis Thompson gets his first win. Some great performances by amateurs as well. Looking ahead now to the Scottish Open and the Open Championship. But we need to give a big congratulations on the local scene to a number of golfers, including Breezy Bend's own Alan McDonald, who opened his tournament with a course record 62, shot 4 under 68 to close out Drew Gollins from Shiloh by 2 strokes and win the Diamond Athletic Men's Mid-Amateur Championship on the weekend. Also, need to congratulate Addison Karch of St. Charles, who beat Jen LaFleche from Niagara in the Women's Amateur at Minnedosa on the weekend, and Rhonda Orr of Southwood beating Charmaine Hayden, also a Breezy Bend, by 1 stroke for the women's mid-am. Congratulations to all of the golfers. And shout out to our pal Brian Munns, too, doing some great work getting the word out on all of the happenings in Manitoba golf. Breezy Bend, home of the champions. Find out more on maybe making Breezy Bend your long-term golfing home for you and your family. Give Corey Johnson a call at the clubhouse for details on membership for the 2025 season. You can also talk to Corey or find out more online at breezybend.ca about wedding rentals at one of the most beautiful spots to get hitched in the city of Winnipeg. All right, we will get to our Assiniboia Downs picks in a minute. And it's not just going to be us, gang. It's going to be you as well, because today we're launching a new contest. We did this a couple years ago where you pick the winner of a certain race each day, and whoever picks the most winners, our top 3, we're going to bring them out for some prime rib buffet and a great night at the track in a couple of weeks. So we'll get to that in just a minute, but let's get to the Coolbet Lines. Fun lock shop today with Dusty. No lock shop tomorrow. They're doing the EST golf tournament. We'll be back at it on Wednesday. But we had a near miss for our CFL parlay that was, well, we had Hamilton plus 5.5. That did not work. But we had the Bombers. We had Calgary. So we were right there. But a shout out to Mattawanek, the big brain soccer parlay I basically asked him who his picks were when he was filling in on Thursday. We made it into a parlay. We had to dodge 3 penalty shootouts and Netherlands being down 1-0 late, but it all came through. Spain, France, England, Netherlands, all to qualify. That one cashed just plus 675, so it was a nice one. And we got our double play on the weekend as well. And by the way, nice wins the last couple days for the Blue Jays as well. Our pals Mike Wynn and the Wynn fam were there. A lot of Canadians make it down. Jays almost get 87 home games a year when you include that Seattle series. But let's get to it. Tomorrow, Canada, Argentina. We're big underdogs, gang. 10-1 for Canada to win in regulation, plus 1,000. Argentina, minus 294. A draw, 4-1. And the number for Canada to qualify, meaning they could win in regulation or win in penalties, Canada plus 370. There's both teams to score, total goals, spreads, all sorts of possibilities. And they've actually also got some specials for Canada. As far as who will be the top scorer. Jonathan David right now at minus 200, but Jacob Schaffelberg, after scoring in the last game, right there with David, he is at plus 120. Elsewhere, Major League Baseball tonight, we've got a bunch of games. No Blue Jays today. Cards and Nats are underway right now. Guardians, Tigers, Rockies, Reds, Twins, White Sox, Rangers, Angels, Braves, Diamondbacks. We do have a lock shop double play today. Dusty is on the Rangers to win. I'm taking the Twins money line against the lowly White Sox. That one is boosted up to plus 235. So if you like the Rangers and the Twins run line, ride with us. It's in the exclusives over at the Coolbet, ever at coolbet.com. CFL, do we have CFL lines yet? Yes, we do.
Oh, man.
All right. They are out right now. Montreal, 6.5-point favorites over Toronto. I thought they'd be a little bit more, but we did guess the lines. This is interesting to see what we've got here right now. Montreal minus 5, or minus 6.5. Calgary at Winnipeg. The Bombers, 4-point favorites. BC, 7-point favorites at home against the Rough Riders in a battle for first place. And the Edmonton Elks, the winless Edmonton Elks, 4-point favorites at home against the Ottawa Redblacks. Now, if you're betting CFL at Coolbet at any point this week, what you need to do is if you bet $10 on a game or $5 on a couple games, send us a screenshot of your bet and just send it into contest at winnipegsportstalk.com. We'll be picking qualifiers each week, and every qualifier is going to get a marble. And in early August, we will run the marble race, and whoever wins will be coming with me and the 1930 crew to the Labor Day Classic. Trip for 2, travel to and from Regina, 2 nights hotel, tickets for the Labor Day Classic, cool bet swag, some swag from the tour. It's going to be awesome. So for all of you cool bettors who are already betting on the Bombers or betting on the CFL at Coolbet, screen cap those things, get us in contests at winnipegsportstalk.com. And we missed the qualifying the 1 week because we were in Vegas. So I want to congratulate Scott Westman and Joey Pankew for being qualifiers for the last 2 weeks. They joined Mark and Keith in it. We'll do those throughout the rest of the month of July. First week in August, and then give the trip away in the second week in August. And Labor Day Classic's going to be fun this year. The Riders are good again. The rivalry's there, and it's just such a fun weekend. So, again, if you're betting at Coolbet, you want to go to the Labor Day Classic, screen cap those bets, send them into contest at winnipegsportstalk.com, and we'll go from there. And if you haven't played a Coolbet before, use the promo code WST. When you make your first deposit, we'll hook you up with a 100% bonus, up to $200 on that first deposit. Time to get back to the track, Reem.
Yeah, it's been a bit. We were away, and you were away. We took some unintended time off, but I want to get these bets going. Time for me to make up some ground here. I'm super pumped to be putting these in here.
Now, listen, before we make our picks, we did this 2 years ago, and we had a great time. I think who was our winners? T-Kona Polly won, Bridget won.
Yeah, who's there? Em Sheldon was there.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So basically what you folks are going to need to do is we're going to pick a race each day. You're going to pick the winner and email your selection in to Sherry over to Assiniboia Downs. Sherry's going to be keeping standings, and whoever has the most wins, we're going to invite you out to join us for that incredible prime rib buffet and more down at the track. So write this down right now. Sherry G, SHERIG at asdowns.com. There it is. Sherry G, 1R, 1I at asdowns.com. And today we're going to be doing race 5. So we'll touch on race 5 in just a minute once we get into all of our picks. But Remo, where are you starting off today with your selections?
Oh, I didn't put a pick in on race 5. Do I have to or no?
No, you don't have to.
Okay.
You'll already be there. You'll already be there.
Okay, good.
I'm actually starting in race number 1 today.
So am I.
I got a race, and I'm going $4 to win on number 4, Bankers Day.
I am on race 1. I did an exacta box 2-4, 11, 9th Street, and Bankers Day. We're on similar wavelength on this one.
Yeah, well, there's kind of 3 good horses. I went with the exacta box on number 2, and I'm going with Sir Goosa, not to be confused with our guy Goose, Austin Siragusa of the Moose, but Sir Goosa, and an old favorite, Guaranteed Delivery. 2-4 exacta box, $2, so that's a $4 bet. You got anything in race 2?
No. Race 2? No. I'm race 1, 3, and 6 today.
All right, you go for 3. I don't have anything on 3.
3, I'm going a bit harder, Huss. I usually do like a $3 exacta box. This is a $4 exacta box, $8 total. Feeling confident on 4, 6. Spun Line and JJ's American Diva. That's the program selection and the AI smart pick. So feeling good, Huss. Be careful.
JJ. Well, yeah, and I'm not on that horse. I'm not on that race, so we'll see. I am going to take a $3 win bet in race number 4 on number 3, Gold Special. The second ranked horse in, I guess, program selection and the AI smart picks. Now, let's get to race number 5. This is the race that we need you to make your selections, folks. Here are the Remis. Yeah, you can just pull it up right now. So we've got 7 horses in this one. Number 1 is Field Letters. 2, Down the Street Debbie. 3 is Giddy Up Zoe. 4, Otter Pop. 5, Dawn at Last. Number 6, Lipstick Lady. And number 7 is SC Angel. Pick this one. Pretty wide variety of horses. The AS Smart Pick's a little different than the program selections. Wide variety of win probabilities on the. So I figured this would be a perfect race to do it. I'm going with number 6, Lipstick Lady. Probably because I enjoy the way Remis says it and Kirk Contois says it. And it's been a great horse so far this year. So I'm picking Lipstick Lady. But again, what you're going to want to do is just email whichever horse you think will win race number 5 tonight to Sherry G, SHERIG at asdowns.com. Again, we're going to do this today, tomorrow, Wednesday this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week. And you're just going to want to pick winners. So join us every day for this segment. Come back to it if you can. You just got to get your picks in before the races go off. So even if you're checking out Winnipeg Sports Talk at 6 or 7 o'clock, you can still get your picks in. But email them to Sherry We'll keep you up to date on who's, we'll do the first 3 days and we'll have a little standings. But for the next 2 weeks on live racing days, which is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, tune in, send in your pick. And then we're going to be grabbing, I think, 3 winners and a guest to join us at AS Downs in a couple weeks for what should be a wonderful, wonderful day. So that is race number 5 and the contest. You have race number 6, Reem?
I have race 6. And then Schickster's asking any special subject line. Should I say WST contest? That's fine.
Good call. Yeah. Put in WST contest. That's a good one. Monday, race 5. Something like that, just so when Sherry gets all these emails, she'll know. Thank you, Schickster, for pointing that out.
Yeah, sometimes, when you don't put in a subject, I don't know if a spam filter catches it. So that is a really good question there.
Yeah, Schickster's always got good questions. All right, what do you got for race 6?
Race 6. I'm going to win. Number 1, I love my life because I'm just feeling good all the time. Number 1, I love my life. $6 to win. There's also the AI smart pick. So, not just a clever name there.
The one that I love is McEwen, who I believe I won with 2 weeks ago, his last time out. But I'm actually this is going to be my triactor box race. So I will take your I love my life. I will take McEwen, and I'm going to add number 4, valid defense. So a 1-4-7 triactor box for $6 rounds out my selections for today. You didn't have race 7?
I'm done. I only have 3 bets today because I went hard on race 3, my 4-6 exacta. So that better win us.
That's right.
You do have more chances to win when you make more bets. So
Well, I sort of did that. I like spreading it out a little bit.
I didn't do that.
Anyways, 7 horses in the last 3 races. We'll usually just pick the biggest race of the day for our contest selection every day. But again, race 5, pick your winner. You can go to hpibet.com and click on Assiniboia Downs and find out more information on all the tracks. And again, if you want to open an account like us, and we can play there each and every day, you can make your picks remotely for Assiniboia Downs. That was a fun show today. It was great to have that sort of Victory Monday feeling with both the Bombers and the excitement of the Canadian soccer team. And, of course, we'll be looking forward to catching up with more of our Jets guys this week on their thoughts coming out of development camp, as well as how the roster looks now that we're getting into July. We'll, I'm sure, be discussing the RFAs the team still needs to sign, including Cole Perfetti, and then get a little closer to a little bit of downtime for hockey in August, then firing it back up again in September.
Yeah, are we still on Rutger watch? What's going on there? I thought about doing a Real Us, like a super cut of just Cheveldayoff calling out Rutger, or what we think, what we perceive as calling out Rutger after free agency, saying, if you're a young player in Winnipeg, a lot of opportunity, and, mentioning Brad Lambert doesn't have to be here, but he's just such a good leader and such a good part of this organization. And was the line? Oh yeah, the National Hockey League is all about earning your spot. Really, I don't know if I'm reading too much in between the lines there or what. Maybe sometimes what the ear hears is what you want it to hear. I forget the line there. But yeah, we do have stuff. Mike had some great stories coming out of training camp. Chaz Lucius was one who was super interesting. A guy who's battling back from injury, trying to get healthy, and maybe we've written him off as a prospect, coming up off being a first-round pick, but I don't think he's written himself on it. He's working real hard to get an opportunity with the Jets organization, and they've certainly supported him throughout all of his rehabs and recovery. So I'm looking, I got my eye on. I'm pulling for the guy. So some good work there in the free press by Mike and the team.
Yeah, listen, we'll talk more Chaz Lucius, Brad Lambert, Elias Salmonson, get thoughts on all of those players. And again, I don't want to put too much into development camp because it's exactly that, a camp to come in and get comfortable, learn more about the organization, a bunch of off-ice things. But a lot of these young men that we're seeing in development camp project to be Winnipeg Jets, some as early as this year, some in the next coming years. So it is always a point of interest for us. But yeah, we'll get Mike on the show tomorrow and chop all that up. More on tomorrow's big game between Canada and Argentina. The Bombers continuing practice, getting ready for Calgary on Friday, and much, much more. Thanks again to all of our sponsors who make things happen each and every day. Tomorrow's Why Not question of the day for Not AutoCorp, by the way. It will definitely be Canada-Argentina related. Just have to think of something that can be a good back and forth either way. But again, shout out to our friends at Not AutoCorp over at Waverly and McGillivray. But yes, it will be the big one tomorrow, Canada-Argentina. Cannot wait for it. But in the meantime, we'll enjoy some beautiful weather tonight. This should be a great week. Great for baseball with the Gold Eyes back at it tomorrow. And we'll have another packed show. So do not miss us, and make sure to get those picks in for Race 5 to Sherry G at asdowns.com. And another chance to get another winner tomorrow with us towards the end of the show with our picks for Assiniboia Downs. Good stuff, everyone. Have a great, great evening. Thanks for hanging with us. We'll see you tomorrow before Canada takes on Messi right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Have a good one.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.